Chapter 59. The next day, by the time the little fellow woke up, the sun was already up to her butt. She was sitting in the yard, quietly reading a magazine. A black kitten was curled up in a ball, yawning at his feet in boredom. The little fellow sat up, then raised her hands and rubbed her eyes. Before he put down his hands, she had already shouted in a muffled voice, "Papa, Papa! Hey, here, I'm coming." Hearing the little fellow shout, Chun-Shi immediately dropped the magazine in his hand and ran into the room. "Papa, carry me." The little fellow couldn't open her eyes. After glancing at Chun-Shi through a slit, she stretched out her hands for him to carry her. "Okay, let's go. Papa will take you to wash your face." Chun-Shi put his hand under the little fellow's armpit, lifted her up from the bed, and then carried her to wash up. After washing her face and brushing her teeth, the little fellow finally woke up. Perhaps it was because she had rested well last night, but she seemed to be in high spirits. Before Chun-Shi had time to wash her face for the second time, the little fellow had run out of the bathroom excitedly. "I'm going to climb the mountain." "Don't worry, eat first." Chun-Shi quickly put down the towel and chased out. At this time, the little fellow suddenly exclaimed, "Ah, kitty!" The black cat was squatting at the door and watching. When it saw the little fellow pouncing on it, it immediately jumped to the bed and avoided the little fellow. The little fellow was not as agile as it. After missing, she didn't give up and turn around to chase it again. But the black cat didn't seem to like being close to her, so it jumped to the bed, kicked the wall hard, and flew out of the little fellow's head. At this time, Chun-Shi also came out of the bathroom. He saw the little fellow looking at the black cat eagerly with a face full of desire, so he immediately shouted, "Come back, let her touch you." The black cat paused and then reluctantly moved to the little fellow. The little fellow squatted down, hugged the black cat, and laughed. "Papa, I love it." The black cat struggled to jump out, but Chun-Shi glared at it and said, "Remember, it used to be Heaven Boss, Earth second, and you third. Now it's her boss, my second, and you third." Meow. Hearing this, the black cat meowed weakly, as if responding to Chun-Shi. The little fellow rubbed the black cat's chin with both hands and then patted its head. She looked at Chun-Shi and asked, "Papa, what's its name?" Let's call it Big Cat." "Good. Big Cat. From now on, you're my pet." The little guy hugged the big cat tightly in his arms. However, she did not notice that the black cat in her arms had actually rolled its eyes. Cats were cold by nature. They were the polar opposite of dogs. Therefore, Chun-Shi thought for a moment and said to it, "You're also a cat, so I'll treat you as a cat for the time being. Yin Yin is still young." In the future, in addition to staying by her side to take care of her and protect her, you also have to play with her. You can only be happy when she's happy, understand? Speaking of this, Chun-Shi paused, thought for a moment, and then added, "Don't be as arrogant as a cat. You have to be more enthusiastic and unrestrained like a dog, okay?" The big cat did not say a word and was silent for a long time. Chun-Shi was a little dissatisfied. After giving it a fierce stare, he threatened, "You don't want to? Then I'll go find another dog to play with her." The big cat was frightened. Now that it had tasted the sweetness, of course, it was not willing to leave. Therefore, after thinking about it, it chose to compromise. Self-esteem was not important. Therefore, the big cat stuck out its tongue and licked the little fellow's little face a few times. Suddenly, the little fellow laughed loudly. Because they still had to climb the mountain, one day was obviously not enough. So, Chun-Shi could only renew the room. After lunch, the father and daughter took the cat and set off in a car. Although they were going to climb the mountain, in fact, the only one who was really climbing the mountain was Chun-Shi. The little fellow sat in his arms, and the black cat sat in the little fellow's arms. This strange combination had attracted the attention of countless people along the way. One must know that the weight of a soldier during daily training was generally about 15 kilograms, and it would only reach 20 kilograms during intensive training. Chun-Shi was still climbing the mountain. A 4-year-old child and a cat would weigh at least 20 kilograms, which completely met the standard of intensive training. Therefore, after walking for a while, Chun-Shi felt that something was wrong. It was too eye-catching. But he could not put the little fellow down and let her walk on her own. Therefore, after thinking for a while, she simply quickened his pace. Under the stunned expressions of the crowd of tourists, he quickly walked up the mountain. There are so many people here. As long as he got rid of the tourists below, the tourists above would naturally not know how far he had walked with the child. The little fellow was purely looking for novelty and had no special interest in the scenery. So Chunshi directly took her to the cable car that went straight to Jinding. Hearing that they were going to take the cable car, the little fellow was very excited at first, but when she really got on, she felt a little scared. The cable car was different from the plane. Not to mention the small space, the carriage kept shaking when it moved. The little fellow sat next to Chunshi and hesitantly glanced at the woods below the cable car. She was immediately scared and got into Chunshi's arms, then whispered, "Papa, how long do we have to sit?" "I don't want to sit." Chunshi did not expect this. He had always thought that the little fellow was not afraid of heights. So he quickly held the little fellow tightly in his arms and softly comforted her. "Good girl, don't be afraid. If you're so afraid of heights, then Papa can't take you to play in the sky in the future." Hearing this, the little fellow immediately shook her head and said loudly, "I'm not afraid. I want to play in the sky." After that, she wanted to pretend to be very brave and turned her little head to look out of the window. But then, she was frightened by the height outside and quickly got back into Chunshi's arms, not daring to show her head again. Chunshi touched her head and said with a smile, "Well, Papa is here. Don't be afraid." The Jinding cable car was 1,164 meters long, so they could not sit for long. After getting off the cable car, the little fellow's interest was obviously reduced a lot. Obviously, she had a psychological shadow. Zhu Mo, the 21st son of Zhu Yuanzhang of the Ming Dynasty, was a devout Buddhist. He was rewarded 3,000 taels of gold and built the Great Ame Golden Hall at the highest point of Mount Ame. Because the roof tiles, pillars, doors, and lattices of the Golden Hall were all copper and gold, and under the sun, it shone brightly, so it was called Jinding. The real Golden Hall was destroyed in the turmoil many years ago, so now the Golden Hall was a modern building after being restored, not an ancient building that had been handed down. The scenery of Jinding was really beautiful. The vast sea of clouds spread out on the horizon like a snow-white carpet, smooth, thick, and boundless. When the mountain wind blew, the sea of clouds drifted away, and the peaks and ridges became small islands in the sea of clouds. Then, Chunshi took a picture of the little fellow in front of the golden statue of Samantabhadra of 10 Directions. Chapter 60. After soaking in the hot spring again, the trip was coming to an end. At noon the next day, just as Chunshi was packing up and preparing to take Ninian back to Chengdu, Lin Xian called. Ever since he saved Lin Xian that day, Chunshi had never seen Lin Xian again, and he never had the chance to make up for the meal he owed her. It had only been less than a week, but to Chunshi, it felt like a long time had passed, so much so that he couldn't hear anything wrong from Lin Xian's tone. However, the more normal she acted, the more Chunshi felt that something was wrong with her. "What have you been busy with recently?" "I'm taking Ninian to Chengdu to play. What's wrong?" "Chengdu? The rehearsal is tomorrow. I thought I should let you know, but don't forget, Fong Lei only has one flower girl and one monk. If you screw up, she'll really be at a loss. Don't worry, we're ready to come back." She was talking on the phone while looking at the little girl who was playing hide-and-seek with the big cat in the yard. "Okay, then I won't nag you. See you tomorrow." See you tomorrow. The so-called hide-and-seek was not a game of hide-and-seek, but a real game of hide-and-seek. The little girl ran, and the big cat chased. It was also difficult for the big cat. Every time it was about to catch up, the little girl would make a smart turn, and then the big cat would have to deliberately pretend that it couldn't make the turn and rush forward, making the little girl stand at the side and laugh. "Okay, Ninian, stop playing. We should go back to Chengdu." Chunshi walked into the yard, picked up the little girl from behind, and then carried her out. When the big cat saw this, it immediately jumped onto Chunshi's shoulder and lay down on Chun's shoulder to take a nap. Before returning to Zhonghai, he had to let the little girl say goodbye to Aunt Zhang. He had already seen Aunt Zhang's WeChat message, but he didn't dare to reply. Aunt Zhang didn't call him after that, so Chun-Shi was a little nervous. He couldn't figure out what Aunt Zhang was thinking. Although he was hesitating, Chun-Shi didn't stop walking. After checking out, he took the little fellow and got on the bus to Chengdu. Everything would have to wait until she met Aunt Zhang. To be honest, Chun-Shi didn't really want to meet Aunt Zhang at this time. But for the sake of the little one, he had to brace himself and make the trip. When he returned to Chengdu, it was only 2 in the afternoon, so Chun-Shi booked a plane ticket online. In order not to return home too late, he booked the plane ticket for 7:20 p.m., and this time he bought a first-class ticket. He still had more than 100,000 yuan in his card, so in order to make the little girl happy, he wouldn't hesitate to spend money at all. However, after buying the plane ticket, Chun-Shi seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and glanced at the big cat in the little girl's arms. Pets couldn't board the plane, and the first thing to do was to get a quarantine certificate. Then, it would be placed in a pet air box for random transportation. Thinking about it, it was troublesome, so Chun-Shi glanced at the big cat, thinking that since it was so smart, it should have a way to sneak through the security check. As long as it could pass the security check, he could put it in his travel bag and bring it on the plane. After leaving the station, Chun-Shi took a taxi with the little girl and the big cat to number 262 Courtyard on Wuho Temple Street. Today was Thursday, so Xie Pinglin and Kai Shuqin were not at home. Aunt Zhang was alone at home to take care of her granddaughter. Grandma, open the door, we're back. Chun-Shi used the little girl's body to block himself and then sent her to knock on the door. The door opened quickly. Aunt Zhang glanced at the little girl, then glanced at Chun-Shi who was hiding behind her. She couldn't help but snort coldly and said, "You've grown up, huh? You don't even answer my phone." After saying that, she turned around and went back into the house. Seeing this, Chun-Shi immediately put the little girl down, then patted her back, indicating for her to follow. The little girl understood what Chun-Shi meant, so she quickly ran into the house. After Aunt Zhang sat on the sofa, she immediately lay on her lap. "Grandma, I miss you so much." Chun-Shi hesitated at the door for a moment before entering the house. In the house, Aunt Zhang was sitting on the sofa with the little girl in her arms. The little girl kept saying good things about Chun-Shi, so that Aunt Zhang would not be angry. Aunt Zhang was talking to the little girl in a pleasant manner, but when she saw Chun-Shi come in, she glared at Chun-Shi fiercely and then said somewhat angrily, "Hurry up and sit down." "Oh, okay. Tell me honestly, what's going on with that one? 8 million? Where did you get so much money?" Aunt Zhang was the first person to see Chun-Shi, so she naturally knew how much he was worth. However, she did not expect that as soon as she left Zhonghai, Chun-Shi would follow her with 8 million. Was he robbing a bank? Hearing this, Chun-Shi immediately adjusted his expression and said very seriously, "It's like this. You know, I used to study computer science, and I've been in this line of work since I graduated. Didn't I have a small gathering with a few classmates some time ago? Then they asked me to invest and develop a new software together. You also know that the internet is the most profitable industry now, so I didn't tell you before because it hasn't been done yet." Chun-Shi took advantage of the fact that Aunt Zhang did not understand the internet and went up to fool her. Aunt Zhang listened for a long time and saw that he seemed to be telling the truth, so she somewhat believed his words. After all, everything related to the internet in the past few years was too deeply ingrained in people's hearts. So after thinking for a while, Aunt Zhang said solemnly, 8 million is too much. If you really want to give me a salary, then it's 200,000 for 4 years. Plus the 50,000 you gave me before, 25 is about enough. It's not easy for you to make money. Wait for me, I'll give you the card." After that, Aunt Zhang wanted to get up to get the card. Seeing this, Chun-Shi immediately motioned for the little girl to come over. When Yin Yin crawled over, he picked up the little girl, then stood up and ran out of the house. As he ran, he said, "If you don't accept this money, then don't blame us for not coming back in the future." After he said that, the little girl immediately echoed, "Yes, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back either." Aunt Zhang stood in the living room and saw that the two of them were so determined. After hesitating for a while, she could only sigh deeply and say, "You should know that I didn't take care of your child for the sake of money all these years. I know." Chun-Shi quickly interrupted Aunt Zhang and said hurriedly, "Since it's not a matter of money, then all the more you should accept it because it's not a salary. It's a filial piety of mine. 8 million isn't a lot. To tell you the truth, I earn a total of 5 million this time, and now I have more than 3 million left." Hearing this, Aunt Zhang looked at Chun Shi with a complicated expression. After a while, she sighed deeply and sat back down on the sofa. Parting is always in September. Memories are the sorrow of missing the green, weeping willows in late autumn kissing my forehead in that rainy little town. I've never forgotten you, Chengdu Airport. Chun Shi sat in the first-class VIP lounge with the little girl in his arms. Big Cat had run out to observe the terrain. "Papa, why doesn't Grandma want money?" "Because Grandma is a good person." Chapter 61. Zhonghai. After getting off the plane, Chun Shi quickly walked out of the station with the little girl in his arms. The big cat was probably feeling a little uncomfortable because it kept struggling in the bag. Thinking about it, it would take at least 3 to 4 hours to fly from Rome City to Zhonghai. It had been locked in the bag the entire time, and even breathing was a little difficult. If Chun Shi hadn't released a trace of Genuine for it to refine, this guy would have already started to rebel because of the suffocation. So when they reached the exit, Chun Shi quickly let it out. As soon as the zipper was pulled open, the big cat eagerly got out of the bag. Then it jumped to the ground and immediately shook its body like a dog. "Big Cat, thank you for your hard work." The little girl held the big cat in her arms, and the big cat looked around curiously. At this time, a familiar voice suddenly sounded. "Mr. Chun, you're back?" Chun Shi looked in the direction of the voice and saw Ning Zhonghua suddenly coming out of the car next to him. He couldn't help but ask with some doubts, "Mr. Ning, what a coincidence." Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua smiled and said, "It's not a coincidence. I'm here to welcome you back." "Welcome me back? How do you know which flight I'm on?" "I have a friend who is an old leader of the airline company. The day you left, I'd already said hello to him and asked him to inform me of your return. As soon as you got on the plane, I received the news and set off." Hearing this, Chun Shi had to say helplessly, "Mr. Ning, we are old acquaintances. You don't have to be so polite." No. You are my savior, and now you're old Zhang's savior. If you have any needs, of course I should be at your service." "What kind of need is taking a taxi?" Chun Shi was a little speechless. But since Ning Zhonghua was here, of course, he couldn't refuse his kindness. So he got into Ning Zhonghua's car at his invitation. In fact, how could Chun Shi not know what Ning Zhonghua was thinking? However, this wasn't a bad thing for Chun Shi, so he naturally wouldn't reject people from thousands of miles away. After getting in the car, Chun Shi asked about Zhang Jiada's recent situation. Ning Zhonghua immediately explained, "Thanks to you, old Zhang has recovered. However, maybe he still can't accept this fact in his heart, so he's been locking himself up at home. I went to visit him a few times, but I was refused at the door. Now, I can only pray that he can walk out of the shadows soon." At this point, Ning Zhonghua couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He lamented, "I didn't expect that his illness was actually caused by Ziyuan. I don't know where that brat learned this crooked method. He actually used it on his own father. He's really a villain. It's really scary. How is Zhang Ziyuan now? Old Zhang and him are father and son after all." Naturally, he couldn't take his life, so in the end, he gave him some of money and sent him abroad, never to let him come back. Unfortunate family. Hearing this, Chun Shi was also quite emotional. Then he looked down at the little guy in his arms, and his understanding of education was much deeper in his heart. The car soon arrived at Kangji District. After Ning Zhonghua and Chun Shi exchanged a few polite words, Ning Zhonghua decisively ordered the driver to drive away. This made Chun Shi a little confused. He thought that Ning Zhonghua would make some request, but he didn't expect that Ning Zhonghua didn't say anything in the end. Could it be that he really came all the way here just to welcome me back? Is this necessary? Chun Shi thought as he walked into the district with the little guy in his arms. When they returned home, Chun Shi put the little guy on the ground and prepared to change his shoes. At this time, the little guy raised the big cat in front of her and said to it solemnly, "Big cat, look, we are home. This will be your home in the future." After that, she ran into the living room with the big cat in her arms and then directly turned on the TV to look for cartoons. "Big cat, I'll treat you to cartoons." Meow. The next day, because there was a rehearsal in the afternoon and the wedding tomorrow, Chunshi extended the little guy's vacation to the day after tomorrow. After breakfast, Chunshi was still washing the dishes. The little guy ran over with the big cat in her arms and then said happily, "Papa, I want to take the big cat out to play." Where do you want to play?" "In the yard." "Oh, okay. Wait for me. I'll go with you." Chunshi nodded. When he was about to put the wash dishes into the cupboard, the little guy secretly smiled, turned around, and ran to the door with the big cat in her arms. "Hey, don't run." Chunshi took the bowl and quickly chased out of the kitchen. But the little guy didn't listen at all. She ran to the door and then tiptoed to open the door. Seeing this, Chunshi couldn't stop her, so he had to shout to the big cat, "Big cat, look after her. Don't let her out of the community." With the big cat accompanying her, the little guy shouldn't have any problems in the community. So Chunshi was not in a hurry. He was going to tidy up the kitchen and then go out to play with her. Although the child was still young, he had to give her some freedom, didn't he? But then again, Nian Yin used to be very obedient and never ran out by herself. But the big cat had only been here for less than a day, and Nian Yin already dared to run out alone with it? Could it be that she was led astray by the big cat? As Chunshi washed the dishes, he wondered if he should warn the big cat. Although the big cat's intelligence was high, it was still a beast after all. In addition, it had been hiding in the mountains for years to practice, so its mind was as pure as Nian Yin's. After these 2 days of being together, it was more and more obedient to Nian Yin's words. After Nian Yin ran downstairs, she directly took the big cat to the children's activity area in the center of the community. This children's activity area was originally just an empty space. At that time, the neighborhood committee hadn't been disbanded yet. Everyone saw that there were more and more children in the community, so they organized all the residents to pool money together. Each family contributed more than 10 yuan to transform this place into a children's activity area. The so-called children's activity area actually only had 1 slide and 3 swings. Later, when the street office heard about this, they spent money to buy a few outdoor fitness equipment for the community, completely turning this empty space into an important leisure activity area in the community. The little girl carried the big cat to the slide. This slide wasn't as exquisite and beautiful as the slide in the kindergarten. Many parts of the slide had even peeled off, but the little girl didn't mind at all. She carried the big cat and climbed up directly. She waited in line until the child in front of her landed safely before sitting at the slide. Then, she carried the big cat and slid down excitedly. One slide was actually only a few seconds, but the little girl liked to play, so she immediately stood up after landing and was ready to line up again to play again. But at this moment, the child behind her didn't seem to notice her, so he rushed down and kicked the little girl's calf directly. The little girl immediately lost her balance after being hit by him, and her whole body fell straight to the ground just like that. Chapter 62. The sudden turn of events caused the little guy to lose his balance. His small body immediately fell straight to the ground. Because she was holding the big cat with both hands, she couldn't use her hands to support herself on the ground. Seeing that she was about to fall to the ground, the little fellow was worried about the big cat in her arms. So she instinctively bent her body slightly, afraid that she would crush the big cat if she fell. Bang! After a muffled sound, the little fellow fell heavily to the ground, face first. But fortunately, the big cat was a monster after all. So at the last critical moment, the big cat suddenly jumped out of the little fellow's arms and used its body to support her face, so that the little fellow wouldn't fall to the ground. The little fellow lay on the ground, her head on the big cat's body. Big cat. After regaining her senses, she immediately sat on the ground and hugged the big cat again, ignoring the pain. In the little fellow's heart, the big cat was younger than her, so she should be the one to take care of the big cat. The little fellow nervously looked at the big cat's condition, and after seeing that it didn't seem to have any problems, she wanted to stand up with the big cat in her arms. But just as she moved her feet, she suddenly felt a piercing pain in her knee. The little fellow looked down and found that the skin on her left knee had been scraped, and blood was still oozing out. It looked very serious. The blood mixed with the dust on her knee, and the bright red stain against her white skin was particularly eye-catching. Seeing that she was injured, the big cat immediately jumped out of her arms and made a pouncing posture towards the little boy behind the little fellow. Meow! The big cat jumped to the ground, its front feet touching the ground, and its back legs slightly bent. All the hair on its body stood on end. It stared at the little boy, slightly grimaced, and made a low and hoarse voice. If it wasn't for Chun-Chi's strict order to not change back to its original form, it would have already transformed and pounced on the little boy. Big cat, don't scare people. Seeing this, the little guy immediately reached out and pressed the big cat's back, dragging it back to his side. Then, he hugged the big cat tightly in his arms. The little boy seemed to be frightened by the big cat's appearance. He stood where he was and didn't dare to move. Cats usually don't attack people, but if they really go crazy and bite people, they are much more powerful than dogs. At this time, his parents also saw the situation here, so they quickly ran over to protect the little boy behind them. The little boy's parent was an Annie about the same age as Annie Jean. He seemed to be very afraid of the big cat and immediately hid half of his body behind the Annie. The woman looked at the little boy and then at Nyen Nyen. When she saw the injury on Nyen Nyen's knee, she immediately understood what had happened. Thus, the auntie grabbed the little boy's ear and pulled him out from behind her, then shouted at him, "Little brat, why aren't you apologizing to your little sister?" After hearing the auntie's scolding, the little boy seemed to understand his mistake, so he lowered his head and said softly, "I'm sorry. Little sister, didn't you eat?" Louder. The little boy was shocked by the auntie's roar. After hesitating for a while, he cried out, "I'm sorry." Hearing this, Nyen Nyen smiled sweetly and said generously, "Grandma, it's okay. Don't blame brother." But after she said that, her little face couldn't help but wrinkle. The pain from her knee made her unable to stand steadily. The auntie saw her in pain and immediately squatted in front of her, asking with concern, "Little sister, where is your house? Let me send you home. Don't worry, I'll take revenge for you later by smacking his butt." Nyen Nyen shook her head and hurriedly said, "Grandma, don't hit brother. I'm fine. I can go home by myself. My house is there." The little girl turned around and pointed behind her, then looked at the injury on her knee. She then said seriously to the auntie, "I'm going home. Goodbye, Grandma." After saying that, she turned around and walked back the way she came. She walked very slowly. The injury on her knee made her unable to lift her leg too much, so she could only move out step by step. The auntie saw her pitiful look and was instantly furious. She pulled the little boy's ear and shouted at him, "How dare you bully people? How dare you bully people?" As she said that, the auntie used her hand to slap the little boy's butt. The little boy cried out in pain and shouted, "I didn't do it on purpose." Nyen Nyen carefully moved home. Because it was only a scratch, there wasn't much blood on her knee. But that kind of pain was real. It was so painful that she couldn't walk. The little girl didn't know why she didn't cry. In short, her mind was completely blank right now. There was only one thought left: to go home. She slowly walked through the forest path and then came to the main road of the community. Opposite was her home. The little girl stood on the side of the road, looked around carefully, and then moved over step by step. Suddenly, Chun-Chi's figure appeared downstairs. Then, the little girl felt as if she was suddenly flying. The scene in front of her was like a TV series that was fast-forwarded, switching quickly, and her ears were full of whistling sounds. When she came back to her senses, she found that she had returned home. What happened? Chun-Chi sat on the sofa, then put the little girl on his lap, and then looked at the big cat expressionlessly. The big cat was frightened. It was a beast and a monster in the wisdom realm, so it was particularly sensitive to aura and danger. Chun-Chi suddenly burst out a strong, murderous aura, which scared it so much that its hair stood up and its whole body seemed to be bigger. "Papa, I'm fine, it doesn't hurt." The little girl seemed to feel Chun-Chi's strangeness, so she reached out and touched Chenxi's face. Her fingers were a little cold, much colder than Chenxi's face. Chenxi felt the little girl's movement, so he looked down at her, reached out and touched her little face, and then gently put his hand on the little girl's knee. "Tell Papa, who bullied you?" While speaking, Chenxi's true essence rushed out like a flash flood, and the injury on the little girl's knee suddenly began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, after hearing Chenxi's words, the little girl shook her head and whispered, "Brother didn't bully me. He didn't mean to hit me. Papa, don't hit brother." Was it really an accident? Hearing this, Chenxi couldn't help but frown and turned to look at the big cat. Seeing this, the big cat immediately meowed. Fearing that Chenxi wouldn't understand, it quickly nodded its head. 5 minutes later, when Chenxi took his hand away, the little girl's knee had completely recovered. Her calf was as smooth as white jade, as if it had never been injured. The little girl scratched her knee doubtfully, but found that it was as if she had never been injured. Except for the itch in her knee, she didn't feel any pain. She was still young, so she didn't know that what happened in front of her could even be called a miracle. But she knew that it was Papa who cured her. So the little girl immediately laughed and kissed Chenxi on the face. "Papa is so amazing. I don't hurt anymore." Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Chapter 63. In the wedding rehearsal, the main characters were, of course, the bride and groom. Therefore, as a flower girl, the little fellow could not have too many scenes. She only needed to take a flower basket full of petals, appear before the bride, and sprinkle flowers along the carpet. The reason why she was asked to come to the rehearsal was that he was worried that the child would be too young to walk alone on the carpet under the attention of thousands of people. A wedding was sacred and solemn, so it should be done to the best of its ability. Because of the episode just now, the little fellow did not want to go out to play anymore. Seeing this, Chenxi took her out directly and took a taxi to the address sent by Lin Xian, ready to let her play at the rehearsal place. Fang Lei's family was very rich, which Chenxi had always known. But it was not until he took the little fellow to the rehearsal place sent by Lin Xian that Chenxi suddenly had a more intuitive understanding of Fang Lei's family's financial resources. Because Fang Lei's wedding would be held on a luxurious cruise ship. In recent years, with the development of society, cruise ship tourism had become an important part of the international tourism industry, and the total number of passengers around the world was as many as millions. Therefore, more and more people in Huaxia chose to travel by cruise ship. Cruise ships were no longer a rare thing, but it was rare to see someone like Fang Lei who rented an entire cruise ship just for the sake of holding a wedding. This cruise ship was called Xingming, and it was a very luxurious large cruise ship with a displacement of up to 120,000 tons and a maximum capacity of 3,500 passengers. Xingming had only been out of the factory for a short time, so compared with some cruise ships around the dock that had been in service for more than 10 or 20 years, it was particularly eye-catching and even exuded a fascinating sense of science fiction. "Papa, this ship is so big, even bigger than the Buddha." Chenxi stood on the dock with the little fellow in his arms. The little fellow looked up at the giant cruise ship in front of her and could not help but open her mouth slightly and let out such a sigh. Hearing this, Chenxi rubbed her little head and said, "The ship is one by one. Not one by one, remember?" "Oh, I remember." The little girl nodded blankly, then pointed at the cruise ship and shouted, "Papa, I want to go up and play. I want to take a big ship." "Don't worry. We can only go up when Big Sister comes to pick us up." So, Chenxi hid in the shadow of the cruise ship with the little girl in his arms. While telling her a story, he quietly waited for Lin Xian to arrive. It was now afternoon, and the salty sea breeze wrapped around the warm sunlight, making everything around them seem so peaceful. On the pier, the sound of crashing waves could be heard again and again. It was like pleasant music, making people feel comfortable. The big cat jumped out of the little guy's arms and ran to a stone pillar where it could bask in the sun and lay down. Looking at its lazy expression, it looked more and more like a real cat. After a while, Lin Xian appeared at the stairs of the cruise ship with a phone in her hand. She looked down, then waved to Chun Shi and his daughter and shouted, "Chun Shi, come here." After the previous few contacts, the little fellow had completely forgotten the unpleasant incident when she first met Lin Xian. So when Chun Shi came to Lin Xian with her in his arms, the little fellow took the initiative to call out to Lin Xian sweetly, "Big sister, Nian Yin is so good. Come and let big sister hug you, okay?" "Okay." The little fellow reached out and then moved from Chun Shi's arms to Lin Xian's. At this time, the big cat, who was squatting on the stone pillar, also saw the situation here, so it quickly jumped down from the stone pillar, turned into a black shadow, and jumped on Chun Shi's shoulder in an instant. "Oh, you have a pet?" Lin Xian glanced at the big cat that suddenly appeared and was immediately attracted by its obedience, so she reached out and touched the big cat's head. The big cat narrowed its eyes slightly, and after Lin Xian took her hand away, it softly meowed, as if it was greeting Lin Xian. Didn't they say that children can't have pets at home? There seems to be such a saying, but the big cat is different from other pets. It likes to be clean. Chun Shi explained with a smile. Lin Xian didn't understand this, so she didn't ask anymore. Star Dream was very big, and Fong Lei's wedding would be held on the top deck, so Lin Xian took Chun Shi straight to the top deck. In order to have a perfect wedding, Fong Lei had signed a contract with the China Ocean Group as early as half a year ago, booking Star Dream for 3 days. Star Dream had a total of 1,751 cabins, 26 elevators, and 18 decks, 14 of which were available for tourists to move around. The ship was so big, so of course, it had a lot of supporting facilities. For main restaurants, 2 special restaurants, and 21 bars were just the basic facilities. In addition, there was a bowling alley, a sports field, a swimming pool, a spa, and a children's park. It really had everything, and it was very luxurious. Chun Shi followed Lin Xian to the top deck, and the first thing that came into view was a huge open-air swimming pool. He looked at the surrounding environment, then looked at the exquisite swimming pool, and couldn't help but sigh. Fong Lei usually doesn't talk much, and she looks like a cold goddess. I didn't expect her to love romance so much. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Hearing this, Lin Xian rolled her eyes at him and said, "Romance is a woman's nature. If I had the money, I would definitely have a romantic wedding like hers in the future. That way, I wouldn't have lived in vain." Well, maybe it's really because poverty has limited my imagination, so before I came here, I didn't think that a wedding could be held on a cruise ship. The two chatted as they walked across the deck. At this time, Lin Xian suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chun Shi and asked, "Hey, by the way, you and Ying didn't have a wedding, right?" After saying that, before Chun Shi could answer, she covered her mouth and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned this." "It's okay." Chun Shi smiled and shook his head, indicating that he didn't mind. However, when Lin Xian mentioned it, it reminded him of some memories, and he couldn't help but sigh. "Yes, Nian Yin is already 4 years old, but I still owe Ying a romantic wedding. In fact, 5 years ago, Chun Shi also fantasized about what his wedding with Ying would be like. Unfortunately, Ying didn't seem to like this topic, so Chun Shi never had an in-depth conversation with her on this topic. Therefore, he didn't know what Ying was looking forward to their wedding. Chun Shi looked at the busy wedding staff in front of him and couldn't help but be a little lost in thought. Maybe compared to a grand and romantic wedding, Ying actually preferred to spend time with each other in a simple and peaceful way, drinking wine and growing old together. Chapter 64. Love was a matter of 2 people. Marriage was a matter of 2 families. Since family was mentioned, the parents' suggestions were naturally important. Therefore, even if Fong Lei was unwilling, she had a compromise in the end. The wedding ceremony could be done in a pure Western style, but the reception of guests and the banquet afterwards must be done according to Chinese standards. Among the 4 ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, ancient India, and ancient Babylon had long been annihilated in the long river of history because of the invasion of foreign tribes. As the only surviving one, Huaxia not only had a long history of cultural inheritance, but also maintain the continuity of civilization after being invaded by foreign tribes and maintain the long-term vitality of the Chinese civilization. The reason was that Huaxia people had an indelible national spirit in their bones. Over the years, with the continuous infiltration of Western culture, more and more young people began to like the Western festival, but did not care about traditional festivals such as Tomb Sweeping Day and Mid-Autumn Festival. There were two sides to everything in the world. It was not necessarily wrong, and it was not unilateral to blame others for worshipping foreign things. Thanks to Fong Lei, Chun Shi and the little fellow also enjoyed the luxury suite on the cruise ship. Although it was not as good as the five-star hotel they lived in May, it had a different experience. The little fellow was very excited. This was the first time she had been on a cruise ship and the first time she had attended someone's wedding. So, in the middle of the night, she finally fell asleep under the comfort of Chun Shi. The next morning, because in Western culture, if the groom saw the wedding dress before the ceremony, it would be regarded as inauspicious, so Western weddings did not have the part of picking up the bride. Therefore, Fong Lei and her fiancé, Wang Shuwu, had been living on the cruise ship since last night, quietly waiting for the wedding to begin. Fong Lei's father was a college student in the 1980s. After graduation, he entered the state unit. Later, he caught up with the business boom in the 1990s. So he resolutely resigned from his position as a cadre of state-owned enterprises and came to Zhonghai alone to work hard. It took him decades to finally lay a large foundation. Fong Lei's father was highly educated and cultivated. He could be said to be the model of a generation of scholarly businessmen, so he was very popular in the circle of rich people in Zhonghai. Today was his only daughter's big day. So many rich and powerful people would come to support. Early in the morning, countless luxury cars appeared at the dock. Father Fong and Mother Fong both felt that the Western style was not desirable, so no matter how much Fong Lei complained, they were not moved. Instead, they changed in a brand new formal attire early in the morning and stood at the dock to personally welcome every guest. When an ordinary family got married, they would usually arrange 30 to 40 tables. Some families would arrange 80 to 100 tables. However, for a wealthy family like the Fong family, who had a wide network of connections of friends all over the world, there would naturally be more guests. Due to the limited number of seats on the top deck, not everyone could get an invitation of the highest standard and go to the top deck to watch the ceremony. As for the guests who were unable to go to the top floor, they were arranged to stay on the lower deck and watch the live broadcast through the big screen. Guests arrived at the cruise ship one after another at 9 o'clock in the morning. Fong Xiu's father welcomed every guest with a smile. Suddenly, his assistant ran to his side and whispered to him, "Mr. Fong, the two Mr. Nings from the Ocean Group are here." "Oh, old Ning is here too? Wasn't he in poor health recently?" Fong Xiu's father was a little surprised. He quickly looked in the direction his assistant was pointing and saw Ning Zhonghua in the crowd. Therefore, he immediately walked out from behind the reception area and laughed. "Old Ning, what a rare guest. Let's have a few drinks later." As he spoke, he walked up to Ning Zhonghua and gave him a warm hug. Some of the guests around did not know Ning Zhonghua, but after seeing Fong Xiu's father's action, they immediately paid attention and secretly observed Ning Zhonghua, wanting to remember him firmly in their hearts. After the hug, Ning Zhonghua immediately said with a smile, "Old Fong, you're treating me as an outsider. Your precious daughter is getting married, so of course I have to come and support her. Hey, I heard that you were hospitalized some time ago, right? How are you? Are you feeling better?" "I'm fine. I'm in good health now." Fong Xiu's father and Ning Zhonghua exchanged a few polite words. Then his eyes fell on Ning Qiutong. "Oh, Qiutong has become prettier again. When are you going to invite me to the wedding?" In order not to steal the bride's limelight, Ning Qiutong specially chose a rather dignified and low-key black gown today. Hearing this, Ning Qiutong smiled. Before she could say anything, Ning Zhonghua laughed and said, "It's still early, still early. My precious daughter is not as sensible as your daughter. She's eager to excel and looks down on all men in the world. I'm so worried. Children and grandchildren have their own lives. As a father, you can't be too nosy, The three of them chatted for a while before Ning Zhongwu wheeled Fang Qiu's father back to the reception area. After signing his name on the guest list, Ning Zhongwu laughed and said, "Old Fang, you have a lot of things to do today, so don't worry about us. We'll go up first. You can go greet the other guests. When you're done, we'll meet again." "Okay, then I'll be rude." Fang Qiu's father nodded, then waved his hand to call over his assistant. "Xiao Sun, bring President Ning up first." The assistant nodded. Just as he was about to invite the father and daughter of the Ning family to board the ship, Fang Qiu's father stopped him and whispered in his ear, "First row." The assistant nodded calmly. After boarding the ship, he led the father and daughter of the Ning family to the other side of the tunnel. They took the elevator directly to the top deck. Chun-Shi took advantage of the time to bring the little girl to the top deck. At this time, many guests were already seated. Melodious light music echoed above the deck. There were white flowers and exquisite decorations all around. As time went by, the orange-red sun slowly rose from the east, gradually blooming with golden light. Amidst the sea breeze, the atmosphere became more and more lively. Chun-Shi held the invitation. When he realized that there was no seat number on the invitation, he casually sat down in the last row of the VIP seats. After sitting down, the little guy immediately began to move restlessly from left to right. She was so excited. Sister said that when the wedding was about to start, she could go backstage and change into a beautiful white gown. Why didn't she let her change in advance? In fact, it was because Lin Xian was worried that she would dirty the gown, so she didn't give the gown to the little girl. Lin Xian was Fang Lei's main bridesmaid. As Wang Lu was already married, she was not a bridesmaid. Chun-Shi looked around. Suddenly, he saw a familiar face in the crowd. Li Xiuwen. At this time, Li Xiuwen also noticed Chun-Shi. He seemed a little surprised to see Chun-Shi here. However, out of courtesy, he took the initiative to nod at Chun-Shi. Seeing this, Chun-Shi nodded back at him. However, at this time, Li Xiuwen suddenly froze, because he remembered something. Therefore, after hesitating for a while, Li Xiuwen immediately walked toward Chun-Shi. "Mr. Chun, how are you? Asterisk, 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 thank you to Big Boss, still playing, for the 34,500 reward." "Old man, don't rush me to update. I'm already crying. I'm sincerely recommending something good to you guys. I read it every day anyway. The micro theater allows you to watch the complete version of Steel Alchemist in 2 hours. Not only does it save time, but it also allows you to fully understand the plot and essence of the manga. It's highly recommended. I've watched this anime many years ago, but I've almost forgotten it. It's a masterpiece with 0 negative reviews. In addition, he has commentaries for classic anime, such as Fate, The Holy Grail War, and Eva. It allows people like me who want to watch anime, but find it too long and wordy, to quickly understand the plot. Other than anime, there are also commentaries for classic movies and TV series. Chapter 65. How have you been? Chun-Shi nodded in response. To be honest, he was not familiar with Li Xiuwen. And that night, at Sally's restaurant, he even injured Zhao Yuan in front of Li Xiuwen. Regardless of whether Zhao Yuan was familiar with Li Xiuwen or not, at least Zhao Yuan was called by Li Xiuwen. Therefore, when Chun-Shi injured Zhao Yuan, it was already disrespectful to Li Xiuwen. Therefore, Chun-Shi did not think that Li Xiuwen would have a good impression of him. However, after the two met, Li Xiuwen's reaction was somewhat out of his expectations. What's Mr. Chun been busy with recently? After greeting Chun-Shi, Li Xiuwen sat beside Chun-Shi and asked with a smile, "Taking care of the child." After saying that, Chun-Shi rubbed the little one's head. His behavior immediately made the little one unhappy. She quickly reached out and patted Chun-Shi's hand. Then, she gently covered her hair with both hands and said in a coquettish voice, "Papa, you're so annoying. Don't touch my hair." The little one's hairstyle today was not simple. Chun-Shi woke up early in the morning and followed the steps on the internet step by step to make her a flower girl hairstyle. It was very complicated, but it really looked good, so the little one liked it very much. "Really? Ha! Li Xiaowen could not help but laugh dryly. He had already seen Chun Shi's information from Zhao Yuan, but his intuition told him that Chun Shi was not simple. If he was really as simple as the information described, how could he explain the blank 5 years in between? It was very rare in today's society for a person to mysteriously lose 5 years' worth of information and not be able to find anything. It was also because of this that when Zhao Yuan wanted to seek revenge on Chun Shi, he was not optimistic about Zhao Yuan and even wanted to advise Zhao Yuan not to pursue the matter anymore. Unfortunately, Zhao Yuan wanted to hurt Lin Xian, and because of this, he angered Li Xiaowen. The two parted on bad terms, so Li Xiaowen did not know whether Zhao Yuan had sought revenge on Chun Shi or not. Following this period of investigation, Li Xiaowen realized that things were getting more and more complicated. Because Zhao Yuan had gone missing. The day after the two of them met, she disappeared. Even the Zhao family did not know where Zhao Yuan had gone. It was as if he had completely disappeared from the face of the earth. No matter how one looked at it, there was something strange about this matter. Hence, the moment Li Xiaowen saw Chun Shi, he could no longer suppress the doubts in his heart. He pretended to ask casually, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you, did Zhao Yuan come to you again after that?" Hearing this, Chun Shi did not immediately answer. Instead, he glanced at Li Xiaowen without batting an eyelid. Seeing this, Li Xiaowen immediately chuckled and explained, "Zhao Yuan and I can be considered acquaintances. Mr. Chun, you are Lin Xian's friend. If he still finds trouble with you, I can be a peacemaker and have a good talk with him. After all, it's better to squash enmity rather than keep it alive." After hearing Li Xiaowen's words, Chun Shi shook his head and said calmly, "He didn't find me." "Oh," Li Xiaowen nodded, then said somewhat unwillingly, "All right, if you need any help, just let me know. I don't have your number yet. If you don't mind, let me know." As he spoke, Li Xiaowen took out his phone and waited for Chun Shi to give him the number. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind them. "Mr. Chun." Chun Shi looked back and saw Ning Zhonghua and Ning Xiaodong coming up behind him, side by side. "Mr. Ning." "Ha, what a coincidence, Mr. Chun." Ning Zhonghua laughed as he came to Chun Shi's side, then sighed. "We are really fated to meet at someone else's wedding. This time, I didn't arrange it on purpose." After saying this, Ning Zhonghua laughed loudly, as if meeting Chun Shi here was something to be happy about. "Mr. Chun, hello." Ning Xiaotong looked at Chun Shi with a complicated expression, then lowered her head to greet him. She had already heard about Zhang Jiada from Ning Zhonghua, so she truly understood how powerful Chun Shi was. Therefore, when she spoke, her tone and expression naturally carried a little bit of respect. Ning Zhonghua's sudden appearance caught Li Xiaowen off guard. They were all in the same circle, so how could he not know Ning Zhonghua and Ning Xiaodong? He also had his own shipping company, but compared to the Ning family's ocean group, it was really a small business. Many of his company's orders were even leftovers from the ocean shipping group, and then they were casually outsourced to him. "Uncle Ning, Sister Ning, hello." After Ning Xiaodong and Chun Shi finished talking, Li Xiaowen quickly stood up and chose a very suitable time to appear in front of Ning Zhonghua. Ning Zhonghua seemed to have seen Li Xiaowen at this time. He turned his head and laughed. "Oh, it's Xiaowen? Where's your dad? Why don't I see him?" "My dad is still abroad, so I can only come on his behalf today." "Oh, okay." Ning Zhonghua nodded, as if he had no intention of talking to him in depth. Seeing this, Li Xiaowen could not help but feel anxious. Although the ocean shipping group had been handed over to Ning Xiaotong, Ning Zhonghua's words still had a decisive effect. In fact, Li Xiaowen's relationship with the Ning family was quite deep. The reason why he was named as one of the top 10 youths in Zhonghai was mainly because of his shipping company. This company was built by him, and the reason why it developed so quickly was because of Ning Zhonghua's help. A small company with no qualifications, in just a few years, through the outsourcing of the ocean shipping group, became one of the top 10 shipping companies in Zhonghai. What did it rely on? It relied on face. It was his dad's face. Ning Xiaotong looked down on Li Xiaowen because she felt that this person lived too superficially. Although they were all rich second-generation heirs living in the shadow of their fathers, Ning Qiudong could take charge of the entire ocean shipping group on her own. Li Xiuwen, on the other hand, only knew how to deal with the media in his empty company, busy with magazines and newspapers, and promote his name as one of the top 10 youths in Zhonghai. His so-called projects were, in fact, all obtained through connections. Therefore, after Ning Qiudong took charge of the ocean shipping group, she started to reduce the number of outsourced projects, intentionally or unintentionally, in the name of maximizing profits. This move made Li Xiuwen's life a little difficult, so he had already started to plan to wait for his dad to come back to China and bring him along to visit Ning Zhonghua. He did not expect to see Ning Zhonghua here today, so he was caught off guard. Li Xiuwen was still thinking of ways to strike up a conversation with Ning Zhonghua, but at this moment, Lin Xian, wearing a white off-shoulder bridesmaid dress, suddenly appeared. She stood by the railing on the deck, waved at Chunxi from afar, and shouted, "Chunxi, over here! Quickly bring Yin Yin over to change. The wedding is about to begin. Thank you to Kadit Sumuri for the 10,000 reward. Old man, don't rush me too much, really. Indeed, your urging can affect me. If it wasn't for the fact that I really couldn't write, I would have done it long ago. If I were to write the traditional face-slapping chapter of Yin Yin being pushed down, I would write at least 10 chapters. The face-slapping wouldn't stop at all." Chapter 66. Just as Ning Zhonghua was about to send Li Xiuwen away and sit down to chat with Chunxi, Lin Xian appeared. Her appearance immediately attracted the attention of many people. Lin Xian was very beautiful today. Although she had already put on the simplest bridesmaid makeup in order not to steal the bride's limelight and wore the simplest white dress, it still could not hide her beauty. "Excuse me, I'll excuse myself for a moment." Chunxi stood up, nodded slightly at Ning Zhonghua, and walked towards Lin Xian with the little fellow in his arms. "You go ahead, we'll talk later." Ning Zhonghua hurriedly stepped aside and gestured for him to go ahead. Li Xiuwen was confused by his actions. Looking at this situation, Ning Zhonghua's relationship with Chunxi was much better than he had imagined. Also, Li Xiuwen had a feeling. Ning Zhonghua seemed to be lowering his status in front of Chunxi. What kind of show was this? Li Xiuwen had not recovered from his shock, but Ning Zhonghua had already walked away. When Li Xiuwen finally reacted and wanted to chase after Ning Zhonghua to chat, Ning Zhonghua had already walked towards the first row of the VIP seats under the guidance of his assistant. That place was not a place anyone could sit, so Li Xiuwen had no choice but to stop in his tracks. Then, he turned to look in the direction that Chunxi had left. He saw Lin Xian carrying the little fellow and chatting happily with Chunxi as they walked towards the staircase. Chunxi carried the little fellow to Lin Xian. After sizing her up, he teased, "You're so beautiful today, don't steal the bride's limelight." Hearing this, Lin Xian could not help but spit at Chunxi. Her face was a little red, and her tone was a little shy. She complained, "Don't talk nonsense. There's only one main character today. I'm not as pretty as her." Although that was what she said, Lin Xian felt that Chunxi's words made sense, so she decided to touch up her makeup later. For example, she would make her nose shorter and her skin tone darker. This was what a bridesmaid should do. Sister hug. This was the first time the little fellow had asked her to hug him, so Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, and then quickly took the little fellow from Chunxi's arms. After she hugged the little fellow immediately wrapped his arms around her neck and leaned his head on her snow-white shoulders. The reason why the little girl was so enthusiastic was actually not because of the little dress that belonged to her. Girls like beautiful things, even children were no exception. It was not an exception. So after wearing it once yesterday, the little fellow was completely mesmerized. Because Lin Xian was dressed as the main bridesmaid, when the guests saw her, they would stand to the side and make way for her. At the same time, they would smile and nod at her. The two of them walked side by side on the deck for a while. After seeing that there were not many people around, Lin Xian pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "Who was that woman in black? Why do I feel like I've seen her before?" Chunxi thought for a moment before realizing that she was referring to Ning Qiudong. So he introduced her. "She's Ning Qiudong. Li Xiuwen also knows her, so I guess you've seen her before." Hearing this, Lin Xian was silent. When she sent Chun-Shi home that day, she saw some things with her own eyes. In order to see the woman's face clearly, Lin Xian especially waited until the woman left before leaving. So she could not be wrong. The woman in the black dress was the woman who suddenly knelt in front of Chun-Shi that night. After thinking for a while, Lin Xian continued to ask, Li Xiaowen's friends are not ordinary people. Didn't you just return to Zhonghai? How did you get to know them? Because of a misunderstanding, I became friends with his father, so I went to their house a few times. After hearing his words, Lin Xian secretly glanced at Chun-Shi. He was not telling the truth, but since Chun-Shi did not want to say, she naturally did not ask anymore. Thinking of this, she could not help but snort lightly, and then did not want to talk to Chun-Shi anymore. Carrying the little fellow, she quickly walked into a room around the corner. Wait here, I'll bring her to change. Okay. Bam. The sound of the door closing was a little loud. Chun-Shi did not seem to notice Lin Xian's strange behavior. After seeing her close the door, he stood by the railing and looked down at the scenery below. After waiting for a while, Lin Xian still had not come out, but the sound system on the cruise ship rang. The band on the top deck began to play. The string quartet performed a soothing and melodious classical music. After the guests on all levels of the cruise ship heard the music, they stopped the noise and sat quietly in their seats, waiting for the wedding to begin. About 10 minutes later, the cruise ship set sail with a deep and drawn-out whistle. The flower girl was not the bridesmaid, so the cuter the better. So when Lin Xian came out with the little fellow again, the little fellow had changed into a top Israeli wedding dress brand, Galia. Lahav custom-made white puffy gauze dress. She was wearing a pair of white princess shoes and a garland made of real flowers on her head. She looked like a little angel who had descended from the heavens to the mortal world. Nian is so cute. Come, let Daddy kiss you. Seeing his daughter's cute little face, Chun-Shi was suddenly overjoyed and quickly stepped forward to kiss her. However, the little fellow was now proud. Before Chun-Shi's mouth could get close to her, the little fellow pressed her forehead and pushed him away. She pouted and said with disgust, No, Papa is annoying. You'll dirty me. After that, she buried her head in Lin Xian's shoulder again. Chun-Shi was a little speechless. He was actually disliked by his baby daughter. Stop it. The wedding is about to begin. Go back and sit down. I have to take Nian to find Lei Lei. See you later. After that, Lin Xian took the little fellow to Fong Lei's room. Seeing this, Chun-Shi could only shrug helplessly and then walk toward the deck. The deck was packed with people, and the VIP seats had long been filled. Many children did not want to watch the broadcast, so they did not listen to the adults at all and ran to the top deck to see the live scene. Since they were guests, it was naturally impossible to chase them out of the top deck, so there were more and more people on the top deck. Chun-Shi didn't like to join in the crowd, but in order to take a few beautiful photos of the little girl as a souvenir, he had to apologize while trying his best to squeeze into the crowd. It wasn't until he stepped on the red carpet that he finally stopped. The red carpet crossed the entire deck. On one side was the flower arch of the wedding stage, and on the other side was the passage for the bride and groom. Suddenly, the music stopped. Then, a wedding officiant dressed as a priest slowly stepped on the red carpet and walked toward the wedding stage. After the priest finished his speech, the music started again. But this time, it was the wedding march that was playing. The groom, Wang Shuwu, slowly appeared at the end of the passage under the priest's introduction. After the groom stood on the stage, the best man and the bridesmaid walked up the passage one by one. After the best man and bridesmaid were in place, Chun-Shi finally perked up, because the little fellow was going to appear. Others' focus was on the bride and groom, but his focus was all on the flower girl. If he could, he would probably laugh out loud without hesitation. That's my daughter. This was the pride of a father. Thank you to Mosa Fanzi for the 10,000 reward. The first group number of this book, 511-79-3123. Chapter 67. Chun-Shi looked at the entrance of the passage nervously. Suddenly, the little girl appeared. She was like a cute little angel, wearing a white fluffy gauze dress, and suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The little girl's expression was a little nervous, and her little face was very tight. Perhaps she didn't expect there to be so many people here. This was the grandest occasion she had ever experienced in her life. The red carpet in front of her led to the wedding stage, and both sides were densely packed with people. The little girl was only a little more than a meter tall, so the adults on both sides were like two high palace walls, blocking all of her sight. As far as she could only see the other side of the stage from the end of the red carpet. Because there were too many people, she couldn't see where Papa was, and she couldn't help but feel more nervous. She thought this was a fun thing to do. But it wasn't until she stood here that she realized everything was different from what her sister said. Then, the little girl's mind went blank because of nervousness. Whose child is this? So cute. That's right. If only my daughter was as beautiful as her. This young lady is truly a great beauty in the making. Look, our family is blushing when looking at this girl. Brat, how old are you? Chun-Shi stood in the crowd, listening to everyone talking about the little girl who suddenly appeared, and suddenly felt very proud. He slightly turned his body, hoping that the little girl could see him. But because there were too many people, the little girl didn't notice him. The little girl stood at the entrance of the passage for at least 5 seconds. At this time, a staff member of the wedding company quietly urged her behind. Nyin, go, just walk to the stage on the opposite side. The little girl tilted her head and glanced at the staff member. After taking a deep breath, she slowly took the first step. She sprinkled flowers every 3 steps, and before she reached the end, she had to sprinkle all the petals in the basket. This was her task. It sounded very simple, and during the rehearsal last night, she had easily walked through it twice. But when it was actually carried out, the little girl found that she actually forgot how to walk. How should she walk? It was just like writing a word. After writing it, he felt that the word shouldn't be like this. The little fellow's feet were very stiff, and he even began to wonder how far he should take each step. When Chun-Shi saw her expression, he knew that she was nervous. A 4-year-old child walking alone on the red carpet under the watchful eyes of thousands of people. One could imagine how much pressure she was under right now. Chun-Shi kept waving at her, but the little girl didn't even look at him and kept walking forward. Seeing this, Chun-Shi immediately kicked the big cat sitting at his feet and whispered, "Go to the front and lead the way for her, but don't walk on the carpet." The big cat was very smart. It immediately understood what Chun-Shi meant, so it immediately jumped in the direction of the little guy. The little guy was short to begin with. When he saw the big cat running over from the side of the carpet, he immediately noticed it. Meow. The big cat softly called out to the little guy. This made the little guy's heart calm down a lot, and her footsteps finally became more natural. She walked towards the stage while scattering flowers, and the big cat was 1 or 2 meters in front of her, leading her along the red carpet. Maybe it was because all her attention was on the big cat, so when the little guy passed by Chun-Shi, she didn't even hear Chun-Shi calling her. After walking about 2/3 of the way, the little guy's tense little face finally showed a natural smile, and it was obvious that she had relaxed a lot. But at this moment, an accident happened. Just as the little guy was counting her steps and scattering flowers as she walked, she suddenly lost her balance and fell heavily to the ground. As if replaying the scene from yesterday, the way she fell was exactly the same as yesterday. But this time, the big cat didn't cover her in time. Amidst the exclamations of the crowd, the little guy fell heavily to the ground, and the petals in the flower basket scattered all over the ground. And her sudden fall was instantly shown to everyone through the broadcast on the big screen. Meow. When the big cat heard the movement, it immediately turned around and ran to Nyinyin's side. Chun-Shi also reacted and wanted to go forward to help her up. But after hesitating for a moment, Chun-Shi chose to call back the big cat. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Nyinyin. "Baby, don't be afraid. Stand up. Daddy is behind you. Stand up and be brave. You've already walked so far. Stand up and keep walking. Just hold on a little longer, and you'll reach the end." Perhaps it was because of Chun-Shi's voice transmission, the little guy finally came back to his senses. She quickly got up from the ground and picked up the flower basket again. Under the accompaniment of the music, she continued to walk toward the stage not far away. Although this fall didn't hurt her skin, it did hurt a little. So, the little guy could only limp towards the stage. At this time, Lin Xian also walked to the bottom of the stage, stood at the end of the red carpet, and opened his hands to wait for her arrival. But unfortunately, she hadn't finished walking, but there were no more petals in the flower basket. The little guy remembered her mission. So even if there were no more petals, she still made the gesture of sprinkling the flowers. Although it was only air that was sprinkled as she walked, the little guy's tears suddenly fell. Just like that, she silently walked on the red carpet while crying. The cameraman was very smart. After the little guy fell, he immediately moved the camera to the bride, who was about to appear at the end of the aisle. Finally, Nian walked to the front of the stage. Lin Xian hugged her, then carried her around to the temporary lounge behind the stage. The moment they left, the crowd on the deck suddenly burst into loud cheers. The bride appeared, and the scene of her falling, no one seemed to have seen at all. In the lounge, Lin Xian put the little guy on a chair, then gently wiped away her tears. "Baby, does it hurt? Don't cry, it's okay." The little guy didn't cry out loud, but at this moment, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Just as Lin Xian was showing concern for her, the little guy suddenly jumped into Lin Xian's arms, then cried out in a sobbing voice, "Sister, I'm sorry. I screwed up. It's okay. Baby, you've already done very well. Don't cry, don't cry." Lin Xian hugged the little guy tightly, constantly comforting her. She was very sad and blamed herself, so she kept repeating, I'm sorry. At this moment, Chun-Shi finally rushed over. Lin Xian glanced at Chun-Shi, then motioned for Chun-Shi to come over. She was the main bridesmaid, so she couldn't just leave. Lin Xian gently pushed the little guy into Chun-Shi's arms. At this moment, the little guy finally saw Chun-Shi, so she cried even harder. Chapter 68. Well, baby, don't cry. Chun-Shi gently patted the little fellow on the back, and then gently comforted her. It's normal to fall. You don't have 4 legs like the big cat. Daddy often falls down. Didn't you fall down once yesterday? Why didn't you cry yesterday, but today you cry like a little kitten? Hearing this, the little fellow raised her head from Chun-Shi's arms, and then sobbed and sadly blamed herself. It's my fault. I was the flower girl for my sister, but I fell down and the petals were all gone. I'm so sad. The more the little fellow spoke, the sadder she became, and her snot and tears could not stop flowing. Chun-Shi quickly took out a few pieces of paper and wiped her face. Then he held the little fellow in his arms and comforted her. It's okay. Sister won't blame you, and Daddy won't blame you. It's not terrible to fall down. What's terrible is not having the courage to stand up, understand? The little fellow did not speak, but her crying was much softer. Seeing this, Chun-Shi gently patted her on the back again and said softly, You're still young, and you'll definitely encounter different kinds of difficulties in the future. Remember Daddy's words, don't be afraid when you encounter difficulties in the future, and don't cry, but face them with strength and courage. In this way, you won't fall in the same place for the second time, okay? It seemed that his comforting words were effective. The little fellow lay in his arms and gradually stopped crying. On the stage, separated by a wall, the bride and groom said, I do to each other under the inquiry of the officiator. Behind the stage, the little fellow lay in Chun-Shi's arms, nodded gently, and said, Okay. The cruise ship slowly sailed away, and several seagulls flew over the cruise ship. Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering cheer on the cruise ship. That was the heartfelt blessing of everyone to the newlyweds. The ceremony was over, and the host asked everyone to move to the dining room through the sound system. Then, Lin Xian rushed to the lounge in a hurry. She turned the corner, and just as she entered the lounge, she saw Chun-Shi standing on the bow of the ship, holding the little fellow's arms with both hands and holding her high in the air. Papa, I'm flying. Woo, I'm flying. The cruise ship cut through the waves like a pair of scissors, cutting a long crack in the sea. The little fellow was suspended in mid-air, but after looking down at the sea beneath her feet, she wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she was dancing with excitement. Chun-Shi, what are you doing? Seeing this scene, Lin Xian was scared out of her wits. She hurriedly ran to Chun-Shi's side to take the little guy. What kind of father are you? Do you know how dangerous this is? This was a cruise ship. If you fall down, you'll immediately be smashed to pieces. After hugging the little fellow tightly in his arms, Lin Xian glanced below the bow with lingering fear. Then, he gave Chun-Shi a fierce kick. But Chun-Shi's leg felt like it was made of iron, and her high heels were already squeezing her toes tightly. This bump caused her foot to hurt like hell. Therefore, she couldn't help but curse angrily, F***. Chun-Shi looked at her helplessly. Just as he was about to explain, Lin Xian had already carried the little fellow and walked quickly to the restaurant. Hey, that's my daughter. Get lost. How can you take care of your daughter like this? Chun-Shi stood at the bow of the ship and shouted helplessly. However, what responded to him was Lin Xian's angry roar. In Restaurant 1, Father Fong invited Ning Zhonghua to take a seat. The people at this table were not relatives or friends. They were all well-known, rich, and powerful people in Zhonghai. Ning Zhonghua exchanged a few pleasantries with Father Fong, then greeted some of his acquaintances who were already at the table. Then, he quietly called Ning Qiutong and ordered, "Go find Mr. Chun and see if you can invite him over." Hearing this, Ning Qiutong couldn't help but frown and ask, "He's not even a member of this circle. Is it appropriate for us to invite him over?" As she spoke, she motioned for Ning Zhonghua to look at Father Fong, the host. "Listen to Dad, go. Being on good terms with him will do us no harm. No matter how rich we are, we need to be alive to spend it, right? Mr. Chun is a hidden expert, but as long as he is willing to do something, then there will be a day when his name will spread far and wide. When that time comes, they won't go directly to Mr. Chun. They will have to go through me. Do you understand what I mean?" "I understand, but I don't think he will come." Ning Qiutong said this, but she still turned and walked out. Inviting him over was just to express their attitude. As for whether he would come or not, that was another question. Ning Qiutong walked slowly from the deepest part of the venue to the door, carefully scanning the guests at each table. Finally, she found Chun-Shi in a corner. Lin Xian was the main bridesmaid, so after carrying the little girl into the dining room, she had to return the little girl to Chun-Shi. Then, she changed into the toast dress with Fong Lei. Chun-Shi's table was very interesting. It seemed to be a table for women and children. At the 12 tables, he was the only man. The others were all women and children. Ning Qiutong stood not far away, listening to Chun-Shi and a few women talking about children's education. She couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. 100,000 yuan was not even enough for her to buy a bag. It was also because of this 100,000 yuan that she almost killed Ning Zhonghua. Therefore, after this incident, Ning Qiutong's personality changed a lot. In the past, she was the female president who had just taken charge of the Ocean Group. Her whole body exuded a sharp aura like a sharp blade. Her imposing manner was enough to make everyone unconsciously bow their heads in front of her. She always meant what she said. As long as she made a judgment, she would absolutely believe in her own judgment. It wasn't until that day, when she helplessly knelt in front of Chun-Shi, that she finally realized where she had gone wrong. Maybe this was a good thing. She was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. After all, she had to go through some things to transform and become more perfect. After hesitating for a moment, Ning Qiutong came behind Chun-Shi and said softly, "Mr. Chun." Chun-Shi looked back and saw that it was Ning Qiutong, so he asked, "Miss Ning, what's the matter? My father wants to invite you to his table. Do you think it's okay?" Ning Qiutong pointed to the deepest part of the venue. Seeing this, Chun-Shi immediately shook his head and said politely, "No, it's okay. I have a child here, so it's not that troublesome." Okay, take your time." After Chun-Shi rejected her, Ning Qiutong didn't say anything more. She nodded at him gently and went back. After Ning Qiutong left, a woman next to Chun-Shi asked with a smirk, "Young man, who's that girl?" "She's pretty." "A friend." Chun, she replied politely. A friend? You have such a beautiful female friend? The woman didn't seem to believe it. Before Chun she had time to explain, she said with a smirk, that bridesmaid is also your friend, right? TSK, TSK. Young people these days are amazing. Her words, which were full of meaning, immediately caused the other big sisters at the table to laugh. Seeing this, Chun, she could only smile and say, she's really a friend. Don't tell me you all think that there's no such thing as a simple friendship between a man and a woman? No. Hearing this, the big sisters immediately replied in unison. You guys are so shallow. After saying this, Chun, she also laughed with them. The women were just joking, so Chun, she didn't take it to heart. Because in reality, his relationship with Ning Xiaodong could not even be considered as a friend. Chapter 69. During lunch, Chun, she talked with several older sisters about how to educate children, which gave Chun Shi a lot of inspiration. For example, don't hold the child all the time and let her walk around more. Children must walk more, and walking is good for joint development. At the same time, exercise will also increase the child's lung capacity. The stronger the respiratory organ, the stronger the vitality naturally. In addition, more sun exposure to prevent osteoporosis, which is conducive to the healthy growth of children. Although there was Chun Shi, and Yin Yin's body absolutely could not have any problems, the older sister's advice was still very pertinent. These older sisters were also experienced. In just the time it took to eat a meal, they could see how much Chun Shi doted on the little guy, so they earnestly advised him to learn how to properly refuse. It was good to spoil his daughter, but he couldn't spoil her too much. Blindly spoiling and doting would harm a child. The cruise ship was still in the process of cruising and would not return until dinner. So after lunch, Chun Shi took the little fellow back to the suite and let the big cat play hide-and-seek with the little fellow in the room. And he turned on the TV to watch. Where are we going, Dad? This was also the older sister's advice. Otherwise, Chun Shi would not have known that there was such a variety show about parent-child interaction in the world. Some of the children were older than Yin Yin, and some were younger than her. As soon as the theme song was played, the little fellow had already heard the sound and ran over. Then she sat next to Chun Shi with the big cat in her arms and watched with him. After watching for a while, the little fellow pointed to a little boy who was being difficult on the TV and giggled, Papa, that brother is so silly. He's crying, so shameful. Looking at her complacent look, she had probably forgotten that she was crying in the morning. Hearing this, Chun Shi couldn't help poking her little face and said with a smile, You know how to be shy. Then don't be like this brother in the future, crying all the time. I'm not going to cry. The little fellow was still so proud. The father and daughter chatted and joked while watching TV. At this time, a knock suddenly sounded. Sister is here. I'll open the door. Lin Xian said that she would come and play with her after she was done. So the little girl immediately jumped off the sofa and ran to open the door. However, when she opened the door, she didn't see Sister Lin Xian, but the uncle she had seen a few times before. Uncle, who are you looking for? The little fellow stood behind the door and poked her head out, asking knowingly. Standing outside the door were Ning Zhonghua and Ning Qiutong. They had met this morning. Ning Zhonghua lowered his head and glanced at her. He knew that the little fellow was pretending to be strange, so he laughed and said, Little darling, I'm here to find your father. Can you let us in? Oh, the little fellow nodded, but did not move aside. Instead, she looked back at Chun Shi in the room. Chun Shi had heard the movement at the door, so he sat up and waved to her, motioning her to come back. The little fellow jumped into Chun Shi's arms, and then said in a muffled voice, Papa, that old uncle is here to see you again. I know. Chun Shi pinched her little face, and then shouted to the door, Mr. Ning, the child is not sensible. Please come in. Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua gently pushed the door open, then looked at Chun Shi and laughed. Mr. Chun, am I disturbing you? It's all right. Please sit down. Chun Shi pointed to the sofa next to him. After they sat down, he asked, What can I do for you? Ning Zhonghua smiled. After sorting out his words, he slowly said, When we were eating just now, I talked to a few friends about you. This you don't mind, do you? Chun-Shi shook his head with a smile and replied, "It's all right. I don't mind." "That's good, that's good." Ning Zhonghua nodded and seemed to be relieved. So he continued, "After one of my friends heard about your medical skills, he asked me to ask you if you can completely cure his diabetes." Diabetes? Hearing this, Chun-Shi couldn't help but feel a little dumbfounded. He suddenly knew that Ning Zhonghua had bragged about his magical skills outside. "It can't be cured?" Ning Zhonghua carefully probed. "It can be cured." Chun-Shi nodded. After glancing at Ning Zhonghua, an idea popped up in his mind. So he slowly said, "Diabetes is not a terminal disease. As long as you take the pill I gave you last time, you will naturally be cured, but..." Here came the point. Seeing this, Ning Zhonghua immediately leaned forward slightly, looking like he was all ears. Chun-Shi raised a finger and smiled. 1 million per pill, and the actual effect is not as good as the one you took before. Some difficult diseases may require a few more pills. After saying this, he looked at Ning Qiutong thoughtfully. Of course, Ning Qiutong knew why Chun-Shi was looking at her, so her whole pretty face immediately blushed. She was a little embarrassed and quickly said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Chun. I really didn't recognize you before." "Don't say any more. It's all in the past." Chun-Shi smiled and interrupted her, then continued to say to Ning Zhonghua, "There are a few diseases that my pills can't cure. In Chinese medicine, I can't cure the 4 major syndromes of wind, tuberculosis, and diarrhea. In Western medicine, I can't cure AIDS, cancer, leukemia, rheumatoid arthritis, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which are listed as the world's 5 most difficult diseases in the world by the World Health Organization. As for other diseases, such as diabetes and cirrhosis, if you take a few more pills, you can slowly recover." In fact, it was not that he couldn't cure these so-called terminal diseases, but that they were too troublesome. These terminal diseases either involved cellular lesions or the central nervous system. If he wanted to cure them completely, in addition to taking immortal medicine, Chun-Shi also had to use his true essence to carefully comb the patient's body. For the current him, the burden and consumption were a little too great. After listening to Chun-Shi's words, Ning Zhonghua nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, Mr. Chun, 1 pill from you can guarantee that the disease will be cured. It's 10,000 times better than going to the hospital and constantly tormenting. That's it. Come to me the day after tomorrow, and I'll give you 10 pills first." "Okay, then we won't bother you. Take a seat." After Ning Zhonghua and Ning Qiutong gently closed the door and left, the little fellow came to Chun-Shi and asked in a sweet voice, "Papa, can you cure diseases?" "Of course. Didn't Papa just cure you yesterday?" Chapter 70. After Ning Zhonghua left, the little fellow jumped into Chun-Shi's arms again, and then continued to watch where Daddy went with Chun-Shi. The little fellow watched where Daddy went, but her focus was different from Chun-Shi's. What she liked was the strange scenery and games, while Chun-Shi watched the interaction between the cute girl and Daddy. After watching the first episode, Chun-Shi wanted to show her the second episode, but the little fellow didn't want to watch it anymore. Instead, she leaned her little head forward and said to Chun-Shi expectantly, "Papa, I also want to play 123 Wooden Man." "Okay, Daddy will play with you." Chun-Shi touched her little head and then stood up with her in his arms. In fact, games like hide-and-seek and 123 Wooden Man were more fun with more people. Chun-Shi thought for a moment and asked the big cat to play with him. So, the little fellow leaned against the wall and counted. Chun-Shi and the big cat stood behind her and moved toward her like snails. 1, 2, 3, Wooden Man." After the little fellow shouted, she immediately jumped and turned around, but Chun-Shi and the big cat seemed to have never moved. After several times, the little fellow didn't catch any trace of their movements, so she couldn't help but pout. When she turned around again, this time she quickly shouted, 123, without even calling out to the Wooden Man. The little fellow hurriedly turned her head. Just after she turned her head, Chun-Shi pretended to be panicked, made an extremely exaggerated posture, and constantly swayed his center of gravity from side to side, as if he was completely unstable. "I caught you. You moved. You moved." The little fellow jumped and clapped her hands, then pointed at Chun Shi and giggled. Well, I was caught by you. It's my turn to count 123. Chun Shi pretended to be regretful and said, I'll be wooden man. The little guy quickly ran to Chun Shi's side, then pulled the big cat back to the corner, ready to start another round. Chun Shi, on the other hand, did what she did just now. He slowly leaned against the wall and shouted, 1, 2, 3, woodman. After saying that, he imitated the little fellow and turned around. The little girl pursed her lips and looked very serious. She had just taken a step with her left foot, and her little hand was still waving in the air. When she saw Chun Shi turn around, she tried her best to stop her body from shaking. Chun Shi pretended not to see her move, so he turned around and started counting again. Most of the children nowadays spent their childhood in the company of toys and cartoons. It wasn't that they didn't like to play games such as 123 wooden dummies, hide and seek, but because there was no one to play with. Chun Shi was very patient. As long as the little girl was happy, he could play with her all day. So, when Lin Xian finished everything and came to find them, the father and daughter were still playing 123 wooden dummies in the room. Chun Shi didn't know why the relationship between the little fellow and Lin Xian had improved by leaps and bounds. Lin Xian was just an ordinary big sister in the eyes of the little fellow, but after attending Fong Lei's wedding, the little fellow began to like Lin Xian very much. So when she heard the knock on the door, she ran to open it excitedly. This time, it was Lin Xian standing outside the door. When Lin Xian saw that she was sweating profusely, her first reaction was to take her to the bathroom and wash her face with a hot towel. What are you playing? Are you having so much fun? 123 wooden dummies. It's so fun. After Lin Xian washed her face, the little fellow's whole face was still red, looking like a ripe apple. Have you been playing for a long time? Are you tired? Tired, but it's fun. Lin Xian gently tapped the tip of her little nose, then carried her out of the bathroom. Drink some water. Children need to drink more water. After pouring a glass of water for the little fellow and letting her gulp it down, Lin Xian looked at Chun Shi and praised, when a man takes care of a child, not many are as patient as you. Hearing this, Chun Shi suddenly smiled and said, This is my daughter. If I don't have patience for her, who will? Lin Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Then she took the bouquet she brought and handed it to the little fellow. Big sister brought you a bouquet of flowers. Do you like it? I like it. It's so beautiful. It smells so good. The little fellow took the bouquet and smelled it, then suddenly smiled happily. She had seen this bouquet yesterday, but Lin Xian didn't allow her to touch it. She didn't expect that she would give it to her today. At this time, Chun Shi said thoughtfully, This is the bride's bouquet, right? I heard that after the bridesmaid receives the bouquet, it's best to dry it and leave it at home for a good omen. If you give it to her like this, I'm afraid this bouquet won't live past tonight. I don't believe in that. Lin Xian shook her head and pinched the little fellow's little face, then looked at Chun Shi thoughtfully and said, Happiness isn't given by others, it's fought for by oneself. That's insightful. Chun Shi gave her a thumbs up, then continued to smile and said, Yesterday, I heard from Fong Lei that you seem to have been single all this time. Since happiness is fought for by oneself, why don't you fight for it? This woman is an old lady after 28. She can't be single forever, right? Hearing this, Lin Xian's expression changed, as if she was a little angry. It's none of your business. Her voice wasn't loud, and after she finished speaking, she turned her head and played with the little fellow. It seemed that she didn't want to talk to Chun Shi anymore. Seeing this, Chun Shi could only smile awkwardly and quickly apologize to her. Sorry, I said too much, humph. Lin Xian snorted softly, but still didn't say anything. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Chun Shi looked at the TV and didn't dare to say anything more. After Lin Xian played with the little fellow for a while, she seemed to have calmed down. She turned her head again, looked at him, and asked, After dinner, the cruise ship will go out to sea again and will return the day after tomorrow. You are going to stay until the day after tomorrow? I'm going to take her back later. We've been out for a few days. It's almost time to go back to kindergarten. Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect them to leave so soon. So she immediately became a little anxious and said quickly, It's rare to have such an opportunity. Why don't you stay for a few more days? Now the country is advocating to reduce the burden. The child is only 4 years old. There's no need to send her to kindergarten in such a hurry, right? Chun, she was choked by her words. After thinking about it, he replied seriously, I mainly want her to develop a habit. She's more than 4 years old, so the sooner she gets used to the school environment, the faster she can adapt to primary school in the future. But there's no need to rush in these 2 days, right? She's only 4 years old. You're suppressing a child's nature. Besides, she's only in the middle class, right? Most of the time she goes to kindergarten, she's just playing with the teacher. After saying that, Lin Xian looked at the little fellow and asked, Nian Nian, do you want to play on the cruise ship for 2 more days? Sister will take you to the children's park. You haven't been there yet, right? I want to go. I want to go to the children's park. When it came to playing, the little fellow immediately became excited and wanted to stand up with a bouquet of flowers. Lin Xian hugged the little fellow and glanced at Chun Shi as if to show off. Seeing this, Chun Shi could only shake his head and smile bitterly. I only applied for 7 days of leave from the teacher. Today is already the 7th day. Give me the phone. I'll talk to the teacher. Chapter 71. Papa, where are we going? I'm not afraid of anything as long as you're here. The little fellow stood on the sofa, clapped her hands excitedly, and then sang along with the music on Lin Xian's mobile phone. However, after the little fellow finished singing, Chunshi didn't continue singing, so she was immediately unhappy. She stood on the sofa and stomped her feet, and then said loudly, Papa, you don't want to play with me anymore. Hearing this, Chunshi smiled bitterly and said quickly, Okay, let's sing again. Papa will sing with you. She had sung 5 times, and she could only sing 2 lines each time, but she still enjoyed it. It wasn't that Chun-Shi couldn't sing. With his control over his body, it was a simple matter for him to sing well. However, he always felt a little embarrassed, especially when Big Cat and Lin Xian were also listening. It felt weird. At this time, Lin Xian also paused the music. She played the music again, and then shouted to Chun-Shi, It's a good thing that the child is willing to learn to sing. You should cooperate with her. Okay, I'm wrong. Let's sing again. Papa will sing with you. The prelude sounded. The little fellow didn't learn English, so she didn't know what they were talking about. The main song was not as catchy as the chorus, so she couldn't remember it after listening to it several times. She could only muddle through with it. Finally, the chorus came. Before the music on the mobile phone started, the little fellow was already shouting, Papa, where are we going? After singing this sentence, the little fellow realized that she couldn't keep up with the beat. After a pause, she finally caught up with the rhythm, waved her little hands and shouted, I'm not afraid of anything. After singing, the little fellow looked at Chun-Shi with some expectation. Baby, I'm your big tree. I'll accompany you to watch the sunrise for the rest of my life. Chun-Shi caught it accurately, which made the little guy immediately jump from the sofa happily and then directly rushed into Chun-Shi's arms. Daddy, where are we going? Hee, the song, Where Are You Going? Daddy played on a loop. After singing a few more times, under the organization of the little fellow, the game of 123 wooden men started again. But this time, there were 3 wooden men. It was time for dinner. The little girl walked in the middle, holding Chun-Shi's hand in one hand and Lin Xian's hand in the other. From time to time, she would suddenly lift her legs and let them carry her. After they walked into the restaurant, they randomly chose a table and sat down. The little girl was still singing, Where's Daddy? At this time, Wang Lu, who was not far away, noticed them. She quickly used her elbow to lightly nudge Li Xiaowen beside her, indicating for him to look over there. After watching for a while, Li Xiaowen's expression became uglier and uglier. Lin Xian and Chun-Shi have known each other for a long time. The relationship between them has always been very good. Wang Lu saw his expression and immediately knew what he was thinking, so she quickly said, Why don't we go over and say hello? Let's go. Hearing this, Li Xiaowen immediately got up and walked over. Wang Lu quickly carried her bag and followed behind him. Xian, Mr. Chun, you don't mind, right? As Li Xiaowen spoke, he pointed to the seat next to Lin Xian. Because it was just dinner time, many guests had not yet arrived at the restaurant. So, Chun Shi's table was completely empty. Lin Xian's attitude towards Li Xiaowen was still the same as before. After slightly raising her head to look at him, Lin Xian acted as if nothing had happened. She lowered her head again and continued to play with the little fellow. Chun Shi saw that Li Xiaowen was embarrassed, so he nodded at him and said politely, "We're also here to freeload. Please go ahead." At this time, Wang Lu acted as if she had just seen Lin Xian. She immediately stood up from behind Li Xiaowen and ran directly behind Lin Xian. She leaned over and hugged her from behind. "Xian Xian, why didn't I see you when I came in this morning? Do you know how beautiful you are today? You almost stole Leilei's limelight." As Wang Lu spoke, she even made a hand gesture with an exaggerated expression. "It's not as exaggerated as you say. I'm not the one getting married. Why are you being so sweet? Be careful not to let Leilei hear you. You're done for." Lin Xian really liked Wang Lu's words, so she immediately pulled her to sit next to her. At this time, Li Xiaowen also sat next to Wang Lu. After Wang Lu said a few words to Lin Xian, she smiled and greeted Chen Shi. She said mysteriously, "Chen Shi, you're really good at hiding things." "Well, am I good at hiding things?" Chen Shi was confused by her inexplicable words. Still pretending, Wang Lu looked like she had seen through him. She pretended to be serious and said, "Tell me the truth. Did you create the Fuching building advertisement that blew up my friends that day?" Hearing this, Lin Xian could not help but look at Chen Shi thoughtfully. Not long after this incident, she was kidnapped by Zhao Yuan. If Wang Lu did not mention it now, she would have forgotten that Chen Shi had caused such a huge commotion. Li Xiaowen, on the other hand, didn't know that Chen Shi was the one who caused the explosion in his circle of friends. "Haven't I always wanted to find Ying? So I asked a friend to help me think of a way, but I didn't expect his method to cause such a huge commotion. Your friend is really amazing. If there's a chance, introduce us to him. One more friend means one more path, don't you think so?" Perhaps Chen Shi could not stand Wang Lu's unscrupulousness. After nodding lightly, he did not speak anymore. Wang Lu and Li Xiaowen's sudden appearance made Lin Xian's mood turn bad. Thus, she did not speak anymore. She took out her phone and started playing by herself. When Wang Lu spoke to her, she did not say a word. When Wang Lu wanted to lead the topic to Li Xiaowen, Lin Xian completely shut her mouth. She did not even make a sound. He had already said so much, but Lin Xian was still the same. Even Wang Lu felt a little bored. Thus, she could only look at Li Xiaowen helplessly. Li Xiaowen's expression was very ugly. He was silent for a while. Then, he suddenly stood up. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked out. This was the first time he had lost his composure in front of Lin Xian. Wang Lu was stunned. She stared blankly at Li Xiaowen as he left, until she saw Li Xiaowen walk out of the restaurant. She looked at Lin Xian with an exasperated look and complained, "Xian Xian, don't be like this all the time. What's wrong with Li Xiaowen? Why you always treat him like this? He's also infatuated with you. Can't you try? Enough. Stop talking." Lin Xian shouted and interrupted Wang Lu. Her full chest rose and fell quickly. It was obvious that she was very angry. Wang Lu was also shocked by her sudden outburst. The little guy also quickly raised his head and looked at Lin Xian. Then, he stretched out his little hand and touched her face. He comforted her softly. "Sister, don't be angry. Don't be angry." Lin Xian rubbed his little head. Then, she squeezed out a smile and said reluctantly, "Good girl. Sister won't be angry." After saying that, Lin Xian looked at Wang Lu and said seriously, "Lulu, I really don't need you to worry about my personal problems. If you continue to be like this, I think we can't even be friends. Xian Xian you." Chapter 72. Lin Xian's personality was straightforward, and she had always been clear about her likes and dislikes. Wang Lu really did not expect that her matchmaking this time would make Lin Xian so angry. She had done this many times in the past. Why couldn't she do it this time? Wang Lu looked at the two of them in surprise. her eyes full of disbelief. Seeing this, Lin Xian immediately knew what she was thinking. Therefore, after calming down a little, Lin Xian shook her head, looked at Wang Lu, and said seriously, Lulu, I really don't like Li Xiaowen. I beg you, don't interfere anymore, okay? Okay. Wang Lu looked at her with a complicated expression. Then, she sighed heavily, as if she was lamenting. She said, sit down, I'll go take a look at Li Xiaowen. No matter what, he's our family's breadwinner. I don't dare to order him around like you do. With that, Wang Lu got up and left. Lin Xian did not ask her to stay. In fact, other than being a gold digger, Wang Lu was good in other aspects, which is why Lin Xian had been friends with her for so many years. But it was a pity. The values of the two of them were too different, so until now, they could not be the closest friends. In the sea of life, how could one be so lucky? In such a big city, she could not find a single friend that she could confide in. Sometimes when she thought about it, perhaps she felt a little sad. After Wang Lu left, Lin Xian looked at the table in front of her with unfocused eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. Chun-Shi waited for a while, and seeing that she was not in a good state, he asked softly, what's wrong? After hearing Chun-Shi's voice, Lin Xian seemed to have been woken up from a dream. She shook her head and said with a smile, nothing. Okay. Seeing that she had something on her mind, Chun-Shi motioned for the little guy to come over and prepared to let Lin Xian be alone. The little guy climbed from Lin Xian's lap to Chun-Shi's lap. At this moment, Lin Xian suddenly said faintly, Chun-Shi, ah. Chun-Shi held the little fellow in his arms and motioned for her to sit still. Then he asked, what's wrong? Lin Xian hesitated for a moment before asking in a seemingly casual manner, do you have any plans after this? What arrangement? I mean, other than taking care of the children, what other plans do you have for the future? Oh, I found out that the last time Ying was seen was in Shangjing, so I'll be going to Shangjing soon. But I can't decide when and how long I'll be there. We'll talk about it when the time comes. You want to find her? Yes. At this point, Chun-Shi even gently patted the little fellows, but before he smiled and said, if it wasn't for this little fellow, I would definitely have gone long ago. Hearing this, Lin Xian couldn't help but ask anxiously, there's no news of her at all. How are you going to find her? I'll take my time to find her. Information and clues are all obtained through exploration. It's not something that can be found by waiting here every day. And what about the child? You're going to find her. You can't take the child with you on the streets every day, right? That's why I said I'm not sure. Chun-Shi glanced at Lin Xian and said matter-of-factly, the child is already so old. I just came back. Of course, I have to spend some time with her first. As for when we'll go to Shangjing, we'll talk about it after a while. When the time comes, I'll take Ninian with me. We'll walk slowly and look carefully. Just treat it as a vacation. After hearing this, Lin Xian fell silent. After a while, she asked softly, what if you can't find her? After saying this, Lin Xian was stunned for a moment. Then she panicked and quickly said, sorry, I jinxed it. I believe that you'll definitely find Ying. Then I'll count on your auspicious words. Chun-Shi chuckled, as if he didn't notice Lin Xian's strangeness. The cruise ship went to sea again. More than half of the guests didn't leave. After all, a cruise ship trip was quite a rare thing. If they could play for free, of course they would enjoy it to their heart's content. Because the voyage was too short, the cruise ship could only cruise on the sea. There was no way to take them to experience the exotic scenery. But fortunately, there were many entertainment facilities on the cruise ship, so the guests could basically enjoy themselves to their heart's content. After the wedding, Lin Xian completely lost her role as the bridesmaid, so she simply moved to the room next to Chun-Shi's and played with the little guy all day long. From the children's park to the swimming pool, and then to the bowling alley. The little guy played the children's bowling ball for a while and felt a little dissatisfied, so he wanted to play the standard track. However, even the lightest bowling ball weighed 6 to 7 caddies. She huffed and puffed with great effort before she could lift it up. After she threw it out, the ball immediately fell into the side of the bowling alley. Even lifting the ball was a problem, let alone hitting the bowling pins. Lin Xian let her try a few times. She was afraid that the ball would hit her feet, so she coaxed her out of the bowling alley. In the evening, Lin Xian took him to the top deck to eat barbecue. The little guy pointed to the moon on the sea and sang loudly, "Where is Daddy going?" which immediately attracted the praise of the people around. Several children at the next table even sang with the little guy. The crisp and pleasant children's voice and the crashing waves complemented each other. The whole cruise ship seemed to be much happier. The next morning, after breakfast, Lin Xian took the little guy to the deck to bask in the sun. She had learned yoga, so she made a few simple movements and let the little guy follow her. The little guy sat on the yoga mat and tried his best to learn. She couldn't help but laugh at the silly look on his face. Chapter 73. Maybe because of the holiday syndrome, when Chunshi woke the little fellow up this morning, she actually stayed in bed for a long time. At this time, he couldn't spoil her anymore. So even if the little fellow didn't want to open her eyes, Chunshi had to get up and wash up with her. After washing up and eating, after dawdling for a long time, the little fellow was reluctantly carried out of the house by Chunshi. On the way to the kindergarten, she suddenly asked timidly, "Papa, can I not go to kindergarten?" No. Chunxi's attitude was now very firm. For children, he couldn't be too spoiled. The little fellow pouted and struggled to let go of Chunshi, but Chunshi didn't ask and directly carried her to the gate of the kindergarten. Teacher Wang smiled and said hello to Chunshi. Chunshi wanted to give the little fellow to her, but at this time, the little fellow suddenly broke out. She burst into tears and shouted that she didn't want to go to kindergarten. After several times of comforting, Teacher Wang had to take the father and daughter to the lounge next door and then let Chunshi persuade her. This situation was very common in kindergartens. After Chunshi's patient and earnest teaching, the little fellow finally calmed down and then said with a pitiful look, "Papa, you have to pick me up." "Don't worry, Papa will pick you up on time." "Good girl, you have to listen to the teacher. Okay?" After more than half an hour, Chunshi finally sent the little fellow back to the classroom. Out of the kindergarten, the big cat was already standing under the tree and waiting. Chunshi threw it a simplified Pei-yuan pill that she had made last night, and it was so happy that it jumped back and forth between the trees. "You are a pet, and pets can't enter the kindergarten, so you have to stay outside and don't go in, okay? Meow." Seeing the big cat jump to the pillar on the wall of the kindergarten and lie down, Chunshi was relieved and left by taxi. Chunshi had already refined the simplified version of the Pei-yuan pill last night. Although Ning Zhonghua hadn't come to get the medicine yet, he had transferred the 10 million yuan in advance. With money, Chunshi's plan could begin to be carried out. First, he had to find a storeroom. There was a shanty town less than a kilometer behind Kanju district. The houses there had long been plans to be demolished, but the local residents and the developers had not come to an agreement, so the relocation had not been carried out until now. Chunshi took a taxi and looked around. Then, he chose an old house by the street. The house was a little old, and the roof was still tiled. It was 3 stories high and had a small courtyard. There was a fence and an iron gate. It looked pretty good. The landlord was an Annie, and she asked for 2,200 yuan a month. Chunshi was rich now, and he didn't know if it was a good deal, so he didn't even ask for the price and directly paid half a year's rent. Including the deposit, it was a total of 15,400 yuan. After Chunshi paid, the Annie quickly stuffed the key to him. Then, without mentioning the contract, she went back to the mahjong house next door with a cigarette in her mouth. Chunshi hadn't seen such a boorish style in a long time, so he simply tried the key and checked the rooms one by one. After that, he took a taxi and set off again. This time, his destination was the Chinese medicine market next to the Xingwang Temple. This was the largest Chinese medicine wholesale market in Zhonghai. The medicine here was not bought by the kilogram, but by the kilogram. Chunshi bought 100 kilograms of cordyceps pupae, but the boss thought that it was too little and only gave him 20 yuan less per kilogram. The original price was 1,000 yuan a kilogram, and the current price was 980 yuan. Wild Baiji was 600 yuan a kilogram, which was 1,200 yuan a kilogram. Chunshi thought it was too expensive, but the boss didn't want to give him less and said that this was the wholesale price. Well, 100,000 yuan was gone again. Red ginseng was 500 yuan a kilogram, which was much more cost-effective. If he bought 100 kilograms, the boss would give him a discount, and he could take it home for 40,000 yuan. Relatively speaking, ginseng was not that expensive. 600 yuan a kilogram, and 100 kilograms would only cost 60,000 yuan. Chun-Shi bought as he shopped. It wasn't that he didn't have rich customers like him, but it was very rare. So, he became famous after a while. Chun-Shi only bought the best quality and the oldest. So, many bosses took out their treasures and followed behind him to promote their medicine. In fact, whether it was artificially bred or natural, there was not much difference in Chun-Shi's eyes. He only cared about one thing, and that was how much spiritual energy was contained in the medicine. Because he bought too much, Chun-Shi couldn't transport these medicine back. Zhonghai prohibited trucks from entering and leaving between 6 in the morning and 2 in the morning, so he could only pay the deposit first. At night, the medicine bosses could send him the medicine he bought today. When Chun-Shi arranged everything and returned to the kindergarten, it was already 3:30 in the afternoon. Big Cat was still dozing in the sun on the pillar of the wall. The little girl was happily playing eagle catch chicken with the other children under the guidance of the teacher. Chun-Shi stood outside the wall and looked at the little girl's happy face through the fence. In an instant, even his mood was much better. Zhonghai Binjiang Club. Binjiang Club was jointly founded by several rich people in Zhonghai, and Ning Zhonghua was one of the founders. As the top and most high-end private club in Zhonghai, Binjiang Club was also the most low-key private club in Zhonghai. Every member of Binjiang Club could be called a real rich and powerful person. They could be well-known entrepreneurs, capital tycoons, scholars, heroes, and political leaders. In short, this was an elite gathering point composed of political celebrities, business celebrities, cultural celebrities, and social celebrities. Binjiang Club was famous for its jianghu. On the dining table, there were lively jianghu dishes, and in the business field, there was a chivalrous jianghu token. Every member had their own jianghu token. If the holder of the jianghu token was in any emergency, as long as the token was shown, the chairman had the obligation to convene a hero assembly to organize all members to discuss countermeasures and help the holder through the crisis. Moreover, each member only had one chance to use the token. Binjiang Club was not open to the public, and to become a member, one had to go through layers of assessment. Now, there was a saying that without the jianghu token, no matter how rich you were just a country bumpkin who was excluded from the core circle. On this day, Ning Zhonghua, as the founder, suddenly called a meeting. So early in the morning, when Ning Qiutong saw Ning Zhonghua put on a three-piece suit and came downstairs, she was so scared that the coffee cup in her hand almost fell to the ground. "Dad, what are you doing?" Ever since Ning Zhonghua came back from Nanyang 3 years ago, he had never worn a three-piece suit. He dressed like a retired old man all day long. Now, he suddenly changed into a three-piece suit, with a tie, leather shoes, and neatly combed hair. The sudden change in style made Ning Qiutong unable to accept it. How is it? Dad is handsome, right?" "Handsome." Ning Qiutong looked at her father, who suddenly became more energetic, and asked curiously, "Dad, what are you doing?" Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua smiled mysteriously, shook his head, and did not answer. Seeing this, Ning Qiutong immediately stomped her feet. Just as she was about to act coquettishly, Ning Zhonghua made a shushing gesture at her, and then said mysteriously, "Don't ask. Dad is going to do something serious, so I won't accompany you to eat breakfast." After that, without waiting for Ning Qiutong's reply, he quickly walked out of the house, then got into the Maybach S600 and slowly left Jinjiang Resort. Ning Qiutong stood at the door and watched the car gradually go away, but her brows were slightly furrowed. What kind of song was this? Thank you to Ning Xiaojia, the nouveau riche girl, for the 50,000 reward. Jijia is a nouveau riche. I have to hug her tightly. Chapter 74. At this point, the basic structure of the book has been formed, so I'll make my attitude clear. From now on, I won't answer any questions about the plot. I only have one sentence. If you think it's good, then read it. If it's not good, then leave. If an idiot says I'm just being narcissistic, I want to say, are you a moron? Have you read too many novels? You always come here to show off your IQ, but you always forget to bring the most important thing, your brain. Don't you know there's a thing called foreshadowing? You're always wrong here and there. How high do you think your IQ is? Honestly, sometimes when I see your comments, I feel like laughing. It feels like I'm feeding a child. I have to explain things clearly to him so that he can understand what I mean. I don't want to write a running account, and I don't want to write a face for each character. You say it's not reasonable. You finish a chapter in 2 or 3 minutes, but I finish a chapter in 2 or 3 hours. How long do you think you've been thinking? And how long did I think? You can make suggestions, you can find bugs, but please don't make a conclusion without reading the rest of the chapter. That's really stupid. Finally, Chapter 75. Ning Zhonghua looked around with satisfaction. Seeing that the atmosphere in the venue had reached the level he wanted, he slowly said, "Let me make it clear first. Although this medicine can cure all diseases, it can't change one's fate. For example, a patient with advanced cancer who is half a step away from death's door will only be able to extend his life for a while after taking it. It won't cure him completely." Speaking of this, Ning Zhonghua chuckled and said, "After all, this isn't an elixir refined by Taishang Laojun." Everyone was amused by him. Previously, when they saw his solemn expression, many people really thought that his medicine could bring the dead back to life. In short, no matter what illness you have, as long as it hasn't deteriorated to the middle or late stage, your condition will naturally improve after taking this pill. This is a rare opportunity, so I suggest that everyone here should think about it carefully. After all, the youngest among us should be above 45 years old. Money can be earned again, but you only have one life. Even if you're healthy and don't get sick at all, you can buy it and keep it as insurance, right? After that, Ning Zhonghua stood quietly on the stage, giving all the members time to think. Everyone was discussing in low voices. Ning Zhonghua's introduction was very general, and they couldn't test the medicine, so everyone was still a little confused. After about 2 minutes, Ning Zhonghua coughed softly and announced, "Next, I'll talk about the specific process of the auction. There's a screen in front of you that will automatically turn on later. Then, you can fill in your bid on it. You can increase the price at any time during the auction. When the price stops at a certain number for more than 2 minutes, the transaction will be considered a success. The starting price is 1 million. Then, let's begin." As soon as he finished speaking, all the screens in the venue lit up together, including the big screen behind Ning Zhonghua. It suddenly changed to another image. At the top was the first one, and below it was a series of blank lines. After a member tried to enter 1 million, the big screen instantly showed a bidding ranking list. First place, 1 million. TSK, TSK. Old Ning really knows how to play. Seeing this, a big boss sitting in the front row laughed and joked with the person next to him, then pressed a series of zeros. The number on the ranking board suddenly jumped, and the number at the top suddenly became 10 million. My wife has diabetes and high blood pressure. It's not serious, but it still affects her normal life. I hope Old Ning's medicine is really as effective as he said. After pressing the number, the big boss didn't even look at the big screen. Instead, he continued to chat with the few members next to him. Looking at his indifferent expression, it seemed more like he was supporting Ning Zhonghua. Thinking about it, Ning Zhonghua was a well-known business tycoon in Zhonghai. He made such a big fuss just to hold this auction. If the price was too low, he would lose all his face. However, what happened next was somewhat out of the big shot's expectations. Not long after he pressed 10 million, the numbers on the big screen began to jump rapidly. 11 million, 12 million, 15 million, 20 million, 30 million. At first, it was 1 million, but later on, it was 10 million. By the time he received a reminder and looked at the big screen again, the number on it had already changed to 50 million, a total of 50 million. How long has it been? Less than a minute. The big shot looked a little surprised, as if he hadn't come back to his senses yet. While he was in a daze, the number on the screen had already changed to 55 million. This price had the bidder's name on it. The big shot looked back at the member who made the bid with a little surprise, but he saw that the member looked excited and nervous, as if he was worried that the price would change again. Seeing this, the big shot finally stopped watching the show and began to think about the true value of this pill. None of his family members seemed to have contracted a terminal illness yet, but from the looks of it, buying one to keep at home as a precaution wasn't a bad idea. Thinking of this, the big shot couldn't help but change his expression. He finally pressed a series of numbers on the screen seriously. 60 million. This price should be about right, the big shot pondered. However, when he looked up at the big screen again, he still wasn't the highest bidder. 65 million in cash. This wasn't a small number, and there were 9 more. So, the big shot wanted to stand up and ask everyone present, is this necessary? Before he could ask his question, the big screen gave him an answer that he didn't want to see. 70 million. When this number appeared, it was like a bucket of cold water was poured over everyone's heads. The atmosphere in the venue also cooled down a lot. This wasn't a project investment through the company. This was a private payment in cash. 70 million in cash was indeed a bit too much. Everyone present was a sly old fox in the business world, so they were particularly sensitive to cash. Just because he had a net worth of tens of billions didn't mean that he had tens of billions of cash at his disposal. 70 million was already a lot. It was time to think about whether it was worth it or not. Ning Zhonghua stood calmly on the stage. Like Jiang Taigong fishing, he did not say a word. He just smiled and looked at the audience. It seemed that he did not have the professional awareness that an auctioneer should have. Finally, when the 2-minute countdown on the big screen turned red and there were only 30 seconds left, the bid of 70 million was refreshed. 71 million. Even though it was only a million, it was like reactivating clockwork on everyone present, causing the price to rise crazily again. 80 million, 90 million, 100 million. A pill whose true effect wasn't even certain was sold at a sky-high price of 100 million. Perhaps when everyone finally realized that there were 9 pills left, the number on the big screen finally stopped jumping. The 2-minute countdown ended. 100 million. The transaction was successful. Then, an old man with white hair and a beard slowly stood up and politely nodded to all the members present. While he took the lead, he also officially gave a reference standard for the actual value of this pill. With this standard as a reference, the following bids were much simpler. The prices of the next few pills were basically maintained at around 90 million. Once it exceeded 90 million, everyone would consider giving up and waiting for the next pill. Perhaps it was because everyone still had a certain amount of doubt about the effect of the pill. Therefore, when the first few desperate members got the pills they wanted, the price of the pills became lower and lower. The last pill was only sold at 80 million. Then, it stopped moving and began the countdown. Ning Zhonghua didn't panic at all. In fact, he didn't care how much money he could get today. Businessmen were after profits. Ning Zhonghua had mobilized all his connections to hold this auction. What he was after was not as simple as money. He had a big plan, Ning Zhonghua thought while looking at the name of the last bidder. But after seeing the name, Ning Zhonghua was stunned for a moment. Then, he quietly winked at Zhang Jiada, who was below the stage, and he found the figure of the bidder in the crowd. Su Wei, an old friend. He started by smuggling medical equipment. Later, during the craze of state-owned enterprise reform, he used some means to turn a well-run state-owned pharmaceutical company into his private enterprise. Because of this, he completely integrated into the rich circle of Zhonghai. Ning Zhonghua knew Su Wei more than 20 years ago. The two had some small conflicts back then, but with their own development and growth, the small conflicts had long been forgotten, so when they met, they would still smile and greet each other. As for whether or not they were secretly cursing each other, that was another matter altogether. Su Wei had a good relationship with the other founders. In addition, his pharmaceutical business had been growing over the years. Therefore, he was recommended to join the Binjiang Association. In today's auction, Su Wei didn't want to bid because he had always been at odds with Ning Zhonghua. He started in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, Ning Zhongwa casually took out 10 inexplicable pills, and they could be sold for a sky-high price of more than 1 billion in cash. How could Su Wei not be jealous? So after hesitating for a while, Su Wei decided to buy one and take it back to the laboratory to study it. He wanted to see if this medicine was really that magical. If it was really as magical as Ning Zhongwa said, he really didn't believe that with their company's research and development level, they couldn't make the exact same pill. Zhang Jiada was an official member. After this period of recovery, he had gradually walked out of the shadow. Therefore, at Ning Zhongwa's request, he came to help him set up the venue. The two were also old friends for many years, not to mention that they had an agreement in advance. So Zhang Jiada didn't hesitate at all and immediately bid 90 million. Looking at the number that suddenly jumped on the big screen, Su Wei couldn't help but be stunned. He had observed for a long time. There were so many people present. Most of them were just here to join in the fun. They were really reluctant to spend 100 million to buy an unknown pill. So except for the few members who were in a hurry at the beginning, those who bid later looked like they could buy it or not. Su Wei originally thought that he could get a bargain, but he didn't expect that he would be bid up in the end. This was the Binjiang auction, not the auction outside. Everyone was a reputable figure. So even if Su Wei knew that Zhang Jiada was very close to Ning Zhongwa, he didn't think that Ning Zhongwa would really let Zhang Jiada be a shill. 95 million. Su Wei gritted his teeth and gave a new offer. But Zhang Jiada didn't even lift his eyelids and immediately followed. 100 million. F*CK. If this time he said that Zhang Jiada was not a shill, Su Wei really didn't believe it. He didn't buy it at the beginning and had to wait until he bid to raise the price. F*CK. Su Wei was now like an arrow on the string. So after hesitating, he increased the price again. 110 million. Seeing this, Zhang Jiada immediately glanced at Ning Zhongwa. Ning Zhongwa clenched his right fist and then quietly lowered his index finger. Zhang Jiada understood, so he immediately increased the price by 10 million. 120 million. This time, Su Wei was really angry. So after seeing Zhang Jiada's bid, he immediately stood up and didn't even bother to lower the price. He directly shouted, 130 million. This was the rhythm of turning hostile. This was the Binjiang auction. Since Ning Zhongwa dared to do this, Su Wei dared to turn hostile. If Zhang Jiada increased the price again, even if it was 1 yuan, Su Wei would flip the table today. Everyone present was smart. Some of the big shots who knew some of the secrets had long understood that Ning Zhongwa was deliberately tricking Su Wei. Ning Zhongwa wasn't really greedy for that little money. He did this purely to annoy Su Wei. So a big shot closest to Ning Zhongwa immediately coughed and shook his head slightly. That was enough. And Zhang Jiada already understood Ning Zhongwa's meaning. So he didn't increase the price and let Su Wei win the last pill at 130 million. The auction was over. After Ning Zhongwa glanced at everyone present, he slowly walked down the steps. He didn't even want to avoid arousing suspicion and directly sat next to Zhang Jiada. After the two looked at each other, they suddenly burst into laughter, and Su Wei fiercely stared in Ning Zhongwa's direction. The grudge between them had already grown big. 10 simplified version of the energy cultivation pill that was only fit to be eaten by the big cat as a snack. After Ning Zhongwa changed hands, it actually sold for a sky-high price of close to 1 billion. And as the hidden expert that Ning Zhongwa mentioned, at this moment, Chun-Shi was standing in the courtyard she had just rented. Looking at the mountain-like pile of medicinal herbs, she smiled slightly. This time, he must remember to add honey and sugar. There are too many numbers in this chapter. I'm afraid that you'll say that I'm lame, so I combined it into a chapter of nearly 4,000 words. So today is the third watch. Chapter 76. Since I'm the author, not giving spoilers is the least I can do. That's why it's not convenient for me to tell you too much about the plot. I hope you can look for it yourself. The following is a review I saw on a book. I'll forward it to you and hope it can inspire you. The author has already said in Qi Dian that there is only one female lead, Qin Ruoying. In the book, Andy Zhang said that Qin Ring left a message. If you come back and I'm not back, don't look for me, and don't go to my house because I won't go home. From this, it can be seen that the female lead is not at home, but in a hidden sect. Combined with the female lead's appearance, see Chapter 31. The female lead's pregnancy should have aroused the sect's anger, so the female lead was put under house arrest. In the book, the yellow dress girl, Hao Qing, seemed to be kind enough to reveal the news to the female lead, but she had ulterior motives. After that, the female lead pretended to hate the male lead, and her hatred did not diminish, so as to eliminate the sect's malice towards her daughter and her husband. After the yellow dress girl, Hao Qing, left, the author deliberately described the words creak. The door closed again. It also pointed out the deeper meaning of the female lead's house arrest. After the yellow-dressed girl left, the author wrote, there was no longer any anger on her face, only an unspeakable confusion and sorrow. Suddenly, a crystal-clear tear fell from the corner of her eye. The female lead was confused about why the male lead suddenly appeared after disappearing for 5 years, and where he went before that. She was sorrowful because she hadn't seen her daughter for 4 years, and she didn't know if she would recognize herself when she saw her again. The last tear did express her longing for her daughter and husband. This is also the most debated topic in Chidian's book review section. It's about the female lead not being a mother, leaving her daughter behind and running away. Reading civilly, thinking rationally. The female lead's foreshadowing is a bit deep, but the bookworm should be able to see it easily. In my opinion, the interaction between the father and daughter is not as good as Literary Dad. However, the plot is indeed different from Literary Dad. There are too few chapters in this book, so I can't judge the details of the plot. The two books can't be compared because the style is different. There are many writing techniques, such as flashbacks, interludes, foreshadowing, etc. Maybe I don't have enough strength to write that kind of flavor, but I still hope that you can understand what I want to express. To be honest, I really don't want to write some pretentious face-slapping routine, although I have a deep understanding of this. If you're more attentive, you should be able to notice that there is a difference between the way I wrote the first 40 chapters and the last 40 chapters. I'm changing because I don't have my own style and readership like Okami. I want to keep every reader, so I can only keep trying. I dug a hole for the female lead, and it seemed like everyone was scolding the female lead, to the point where I started to doubt my life. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with the female lead. The big bro above basically pointed out the foreshadowing that I left behind. Although his guess was only 60 to 70% correct, at least he didn't go overboard and make all kinds of random assumptions. He had to be reasonable about everything, and he had to speak his mind. What are you talking about? I'm not scolding you, but I really want to ask you to not be such a straight man. Straight man cancer. Some readers may be too young, so they don't understand the pain and suffering of a woman who is pregnant for 10 months. Pregnancy is a woman's weakest and most helpless time, so they especially need companionship at this time. Chun-Shi disappeared for 5 years. When you were scolding the female lead, did you think about how much she sacrificed? As a mother, she left her own child. Do you think she didn't feel pain? Nian Yin is a piece of meat that fell from her body. Do you really think that Qin Ruoying's character is a 17 or 18-year-old girl? If that was the case, didn't she know to get an abortion when Chun-Shi left? You are all readers, and 10% of you will become my breadwinner in the future, so I can't afford to offend you. I'll do whatever I can to earn money. I'm not stupid, so of course I won't go against money. I've explained the female lead's problem, so it's up to you whether you want to listen or not. This is a serial, so I can adjust the plot at any time. When the time comes, I'll selectively adjust the plot according to the data. In addition, this book is Chidian's first release, so your support outside of Chidian is actually useless to me. Chidian is my boss, of course. As long as you support me, I'll thank you in advance. I'm very happy to see you pirating and scolding each other. So, thank you for your support. I don't dislike pirated readers, so I put up the comments for you to see. I really didn't expect that when most of Chidian's comment section was scolding the female lead, there would be a more fair and objective comment in the pirated comment section. Sigh, this book's reader group, 511793123. In his heart, Nian Yin was the cutest, smartest, most obedient, and most sensible child in the world. Moreover, she was still a girl. How could she fight with others? Teacher Wang had seen too many similar expressions on Chunxi's face, so she immediately explained. She started at first, but we quickly stopped her. Well, this time, Chunxi was really shocked. Therefore, Chunxi immediately glanced at the little girl in his arms, reached out, and gently patted her butt. He asked, "Nian Yin, is what the teacher said true?" However, after Chunxi asked, the little girl lay in his arms without saying a word. She did not even bother to lift her head. This uncooperative attitude confirmed the teacher's words. However, Chunxi was not a violent parent, so he immediately asked, "Teacher Wang, can you tell me what happened?" "Of course, this is my duty." Teacher Wang smiled and nodded. Then, she said, "Today is the last day before the Mid-Autumn Festival, so the school will prepare some mooncakes for the children." In the process of distributing the mooncakes, she suddenly hit the child next to her, and then the two of them started pushing and shoving. After Teacher Lee saw it, she immediately pulled the two of them apart. However, when we asked for the specific reason later, Nian Yin did not say anything. The other only knew how to cry, saying that Nian Yin hit him. Generally, when this kind of situation happens, we will inform both parents, hoping that the parents will guide the children correctly. After all, children spend the most time with their parents. Children around 4 years old were already exploring ways to interact with others. This process was like a child learning to speak. They would speak the human language with humans and the animal language with animals. Therefore, the correct adult demonstration was very important. When a child knew right and wrong, it was possible to develop the ability to deal with problems and self-control in social conflicts. For children born in a normal environment and upbringing, physical contact and conflicts before the age of 6 were not malicious fights, but to express their emotions at the time. Therefore, when a child used physical contact to express their dissatisfaction, the adult needed to intervene as early as possible to guide them. Although Teacher Wang's words were a little tactful, Chunxi still understood. Therefore, he could only smile awkwardly. We did not find out the specific reason for the fight, so I hope that you can have a good chat with your child when you get home. Perhaps she was afraid that Chunxi would indiscriminately hit the child when he got home, so Teacher Wang quickly added, "Nian Yin is a good child. I believe that she must have been wronged, so she impulsively used such an inappropriate way to vent her dissatisfaction." After saying that, Teacher Wang gently touched the back of the little girl's head. Then, she said to the little girl earnestly, "Nian Yin, your father is here. If you have any grievances, you can tell your father, but you must remember that you're not allowed to hit anyone in the future, okay?" The little girl did not respond. Chunxi shook his arm and said in a low voice, "Teacher Wang is talking to you. Be good, be polite." The little girl still did not raise her head, but she lay in Chunxi's arms and reluctantly made a sound, indicating that she heard it. "I'm sorry, Teacher Wang. I will talk to her when I get home. It's okay. It's normal for a child to have been wronged. You can have a good chat with her when you get home, but remember, you must not hit her, I know." "Thank you, Teacher Wang." Chunxi nodded and was very grateful to Teacher Wang. Before leaving, the little girl was still hiding in Chunxi's arms, not even willing to say goodbye to the teacher. Chunxi had no choice but to carry her on the way home. After walking for a long distance, Chunxi stopped. He squatted on the ground and slowly put the little girl down from his arms. Then, Chunxi pinched the little girl's chubby little face and said with a smile, "Okay, now can you tell Daddy what happened? Thank you to the owner of The Wind Blows Down for the 10,000 reward." Chapter 78. On the street. The father and daughter stood on the sidewalk and looked at each other. This place was very remote. Even though it was located in Zhonghai, which was one of the top cities in the country, it was still a mixture of urban and rural areas. On one side was an elevator apartment that was under construction. On the other side was an old building that had been built for a long time. After Chun-Shi put the little girl down, she faced Chun-Shi and took a few steps back, then put her hands behind her back. Seeing this, Chun-Shi wanted to pull her into his arms. But at this time, the little girl took a step back, as if she didn't want Chun-Shi to hug her. Chun-Shi looked at the little girl's expression seriously, but found that her expression was a bit strange. She looked like she had been wronged, but she didn't look like she was going to cry. Instead, she pouted and looked very stubborn. 4-year-old children's language skills were not fully developed, so sometimes they could only vent their emotions by throwing a tantrum, rolling around, crying, and other behaviors. Like parents, like children. Aunt Zhang had set a good example for Nian, so Chun-Shi firmly believed that Nian would not hit others for no reason. Nian, good girl, did you feel wronged? Tell Daddy. Daddy will redress your grievances. Chun-Shi pulled the little girl again. This time she still wanted to dodge. But if Chun-Shi really wanted to grab her, how could she dodge? So she was immediately pulled into Chun-Shi's arms. Tell Daddy, okay? Chun-Shi scratched her little nose with his hand. At this time, the big cat stood at her feet and meowed at the right time, as if to encourage the little girl. The little girl's long eyelashes fluttered like a fan. Then she twisted her body and said quickly, I want to play with the big cat. Hearing this, Chun-Shi immediately let go of her. Good that she could talk. The little guy held the big cat in his arms and rubbed his little head against the big cat. Then he put down the big cat and squatted on the ground to stroke its fur. She looked like a child who had been wronged and wanted to hide in the corner and draw circles. Chun-Shi stood by and waited for her for a while. When he felt that she should be almost adjusted, he said gently, Nian, we should go home. After that, Chun-Shi bent down slightly and extended his left hand in front of the little fellow. Seeing Chun-Shi's outstretched hand, the little guy hesitated for a moment before slowly raising his little hand. His big hand held her small hand. The father and daughter pair walked slowly on the street. The big cat followed them from a distance. When a husky saw the big cat, it immediately rushed over with its tongue sticking out. The big cat ignored it, so the husky snorted and circled around the big cat, huffing and puffing. Maybe it found it a little annoying. The big cat suddenly narrowed its eyes, turned its head, and growled at the husky. Meow. The sound was not loud, but in an instant, the husky was so scared that its fur stood on end. It immediately jumped far away and ran faster than it came with its tail between its legs. It did not dare to look back and ran faster than it came. After arriving home, the little fellow seemed to have recovered a lot. Then, she sat directly on the sofa and watched cartoons by herself. Chun-Shi changed his shoes. Seeing that she was so focused on the cartoons, he did not disturb her and walked into the kitchen wearing an apron. Chun-Shi tinkled as she fiddled with pots and pans. Usually at this time, the little fellow would run into the kitchen very clingy and then be gently pushed out by Chun-Shi with a big smile. She obviously had something on her mind today. As long as humans were conscious, they would naturally have something on their mind. A 2-year-old child would have something on her mind, not to mention Nian, who was already more than 4 years old. It was not difficult to guess a child's mind. In fact, Chun-Shi had already guessed what was on her mind. It was precisely because of this that Chun-Shi chose to let her be alone. A child who grew up in a normal environment must have been taught by their parents from an early age. Don't hit people, don't bully people. This was the first time that Nian had hit people. It was precisely because she knew that it was wrong to hit people that she had such complicated emotions when Chun-Shi took her home. This was actually a manifestation of not daring to face her own mistakes. She did not regret it, but she definitely felt very wronged. Why was it that others bullied her, but she was the one who was scolded in the end? Even if Teacher Wang did not blame her, Chun-Shi did not blame her either. But at the moment when she hit people, there must be a child with a sense of justice who stood up, shouted that Nian hit people, and then ran to complain to the teacher. Many parents only paid attention to teaching their children not to hit people and not to bully people. but they did not properly guide their children what bullying was. Nian felt very wronged. Chinchi also felt a little helpless. Others bullied Nian, and Nian also hit others. Could it be that he, as a parent, had to come forward and kick the child to the moon? Some things seemed very simple, but when it came to it, it would become very complicated. During the meal, the little fellow was silent. After a few mouthfuls with the spoon, she threw the spoon away and sat on the sofa to continue watching TV. Seeing this, Chunchi also put down the chopsticks in his hand, then sat down and gently held her in his arms and accompanied her to watch cartoons. Zhonghai was a coastal city. The sun rose and set very early, and as the sun continued to set, the room became darker and darker. Chunchi got up and was about to turn on the light in the room. At this time, the little fellow noticed his movements and thought that he was going to leave. She immediately pulled Chunchi's sleeve and said timidly, "Papa, I'm sorry." After saying that, her tears flowed out of her eyes like a dam that had been opened. Chunchi sat back on the sofa. He gently held the little fellow in his arms and comforted her. "Good girl, you didn't do anything wrong." Hearing this, she finally couldn't help crying out. Chunchi waited for her to cry for a while. When he saw that she slowly calmed down, he gently wiped her tears and asked with a smile, "Do you want Dad to beat him up for you?" The little fellow leaned in Chunchi's arms, thought for a while, but still shook her head gently. "No, the teacher said that it's wrong to hit people. It's good that you know." Chunchi rubbed the little fellow's hair very happily, then held her to turn on the light in the room. Then, Chunchi picked up the bowl and fed her step by step. When she shook her head and said that she was full, Chunchi wiped the corners of her mouth, then turned the little fellow's body to let her look at him. "Nian, remember, it's wrong to bully people, so don't bully people in the future. But if someone bullies you in the future, don't be afraid. Beat him hard for me. Beat him until he doesn't dare to bully you in the future. Do you remember?" The little fellow looked at Chunchi blankly. Her expression was very cute, as if she hadn't come back to her senses. Looking at her cute little face, Chunchi couldn't help kissing her face. Night fell. It wasn't August 15th yet, but a full moon was hanging high in the sky. A smile appeared on the little fellow's face again. The father and daughter each occupied a swing, swaying and looking at the moon in the sky. "Nian, we don't cause trouble, but we're not afraid of trouble." This is what Grandma said. "Who is Grandma?" Papa, will Mama go to the moon?" "No." "Why?" "Because Papa has been there." Chapter 79. The next morning, Chunchi's phone suddenly rang. It was a text message notification. Not many people knew his phone number, so his phone was idle all day long. Could it be a message from Annie Zhang? Chunchi thought as she picked up her phone. However, when he picked up his phone and read the content, he froze. "Your savings card account ending with 1517 received 100 million. 00 yuan at 10:29 on September 24th. Your current balance is 106,278,486. 00 yuan. 10 million? 100 million? Without thinking, Chunchi suddenly understood where the money came from. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel a little emotional. It turned out that money was just a series of numbers for rich people. Sure enough, Chunchi didn't wait for long before his phone rang. As soon as he picked up the phone, Ning Zhong's hearty laughter came from the other end of the phone. "Mr. Chun, the money. Did you receive it?" "Yeah, I just received it. It's like this. The 10 pills you gave me, I sold them for a very high price through some means. I transferred the extra money to your card. You wouldn't mind me doing this, right?" "Of course not. I already took the money for the pills. Even if you sold them for 1,000 times the price, that's your ability. It has nothing to do with me. I'm glad you understand." Ning Zhong laughed and paused for a second. He then suddenly said, "Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. It's an old custom in our country to visit relatives and friends during the festival. So I bought some mooncakes and wanted to bring them to you. Do you think it's convenient?" When Chunchi heard this, he couldn't help but laugh at Ning Zhong's words. The more he interacted with Ning Zhong, the more he saw Ning Zhonghua's businessman nature. It was a source of power that had been completely integrated into his blood, driving him to move in a direction that was profitable. In fact, there was no distinction between good and bad in a businessman's nature of seeking profit. There is only a distinction between good and bad methods. For example, the method that Ning Zhonghua was using now, Chun Shi thought it was a very good method. This also allowed Ning Zhonghua to gain Chun Shi's approval. Thinking of this, Chun Shi nodded and said, "Okay, come. I'll wait for you at home." Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua suddenly laughed and said without any awkwardness, "I'm already at the entrance of your neighborhood." Chun Shi shook his head with a smile. He was truly speechless at old Ning's eagerness. "All right, wait for me. I'll come and get you." After hanging up the phone, Chun Shi touched the little fellow's head and said, "Daddy will be out for 2 minutes and will be back soon. You just sit here and don't run around, okay?" "Yes." The little fellow was busy watching the wonderful cartoon at 10:30 p.m. She didn't even turn her head. She just nodded and agreed. Chun Shi gave the big cat a look, then walked to the door, changed his shoes, and left. Outside the neighborhood, Ning Zhonghua's car was parked somewhere. He was the only one at the gate, holding 2 exquisite gift bags in each hand. As soon as Chun Shi walked out of the gate, Ning Zhonghua saw Chun Shi's figure and quickly went to greet him. "Mr. Chun, sorry to disturb you. How many times have I told you? You don't have to be so polite." Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua laughed and said matter-of-factly, "It has nothing to do with being polite. You saved my life, so you're my savior. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring, let alone a life-saving grace. So this is what I should do. Please don't treat me like an outsider." After that, Ning Zhonghua handed the gift bags in his hand to Chun Shi and then introduced, "The one on the left can't be bought outside. I specially went to Hong Kong to find a master to make it. It's a traditional palace craftsmanship. You have to taste it. You have children at home, so the one on the right is prepared for children. The shape is different from ordinary mooncakes. It's cartoon, colorful, and very cute. And it's all natural. There's absolutely no added color. I believe children will like it." Chun Shi took the gift bags and thanked him with a smile. He then invited him to sit at home. However, Ning Zhonghua was a smart person, so he immediately shook his head and said very politely, "I came here specifically to give you mooncakes. I don't have any other intentions, so I won't disturb you. I wish you a happy Mid-Autumn Festival." After Ning Zhonghua gave the mooncakes, he waved goodbye to Chun Shi almost without any hesitation. Chun Shi stood at the gate of the community and waited until Ning Zhonghua got into his old A6. Then, he glanced at the van that was parked a few dozen meters away. Sure enough, after Ning Zhonghua got in the car, the van behind immediately started and then left far behind the A6. This is a bit interesting. Chun Shi held the gift bags and glanced at Ning Zhonghua's A6, then at the van behind it. He couldn't help but smile. Wei Sheng Pharmaceutical, Drug Analysis and Inspection Center. A staff member in a white coat came to Su Wei with a report and said, "Mr. Su, this is the composition test report of the pill. Please take a look." Su Wei took the report and looked at it. He found that it was full of words, and there were many professional terms that he couldn't understand at all. "I don't understand these things. I only care about the conclusion. Just briefly explain it to me." "Okay, Mr. Su." The staff member nodded, then simply explained in words that Su Wei could understand. "After our detailed analysis and inspection, we learned that this pill is actually a simple Chinese medicine pill. The specific composition test report has been listed in detail. According to the formula, we speculate that this pill can only play the role of nourishing the body and replenishing the qi and blood." Hearing this, Su Wei's expression changed. He snatched the test report from the staff member's hand. After carefully reading the test results below, his expression became somewhat uncertain. The day before yesterday, after buying this pill at a sky-high price of 130 million, Su Wei immediately sent the pill to the Drug Analysis and Inspection Center. After the Drug Analysis and Inspection Center finished the test, Su Wei gave the pill to an old employee who had been suffering from diabetes for a long time. It had only been a day since the old employee had taken the pill. Today, when the staff did a full-body examination for him, they found that his fasting blood sugar level was lower than 5 millimoles per liter, almost returning to the level of a normal person. In particular, this pill was really as magical as Ningzhong was said. Magical medicine. After seeing the power of the pill, Su Wei immediately became a little excited. Ningzhong was in the shipping industry, and he was in the pharmaceutical industry. As long as he got the detailed test report, Su Wei was confident that the laboratory could replicate the exact same pill within a year. Because the comprehensive computer analysis was needed, the detailed test report was not available until now. However, after hearing the conclusion of the staff member, Su Wei subconsciously felt a chill in his heart. He finally believed Ning Zhong's words. Ning Zhong would dare to use his own name as a guarantee. This pill was really something. A hidden master, 100 million for a pill, not expensive. Just as Su Wei was holding the test report and letting his imagination run wild, suddenly, his assistant ran over with the phone in his hand. Chapter 80. Chun-Shi returned home with the mooncakes in his hand. The little fellow was still sitting on the sofa, watching cartoons obediently. From time to time, she would be amused by the plots in the cartoons. Big Cat also liked watching cartoons recently. This fellow was very clever, but it was probably because it had stayed in the mountains for a long time and had not seen much of the world. Therefore, when the little guy was watching cartoons, it usually did not run around. Instead, it obediently lay beside the little guy and watched with the little guy. When he saw something happy, Big Cat would even rub his body against the little fellow. He was really becoming more and more like a cat. When Chun-Shi came back, the gift bag in his hand immediately attracted the little fellow's attention. She didn't even watch the cartoon. She jumped off the sofa and ran over. "Papa, what did you buy?" As she spoke, she reached out to grab the gift bag. Seeing this, Chun-Shi handed her the gift bag on the left. This gift bag was not heavy, but it was a little big. It was about the same size as Nike's medium-sized bag. She carried the gift bag with both hands back to the sofa. After throwing the gift bag on the sofa with some effort, she climbed onto the sofa and then knelt down to open the gift bag. After opening it, she took out a box from inside. The box was very beautiful. There were some cartoon characters printed on it. It looked very exquisite. The little fellow was immediately attracted. She could not wait to open the box. Inside, there were 12 mooncakes with various animal prints on them. These mooncakes weren't big and were slightly smaller than ordinary mooncakes. Furthermore, they were all of different colors, all of which were warm colors. Just looking at them was enough to whet one's appetite. After Chun-Shi put down the other bag, he came to the little fellow and sat down. "Yo, the 12 zodiacs. Can you recognize the animals on them?" "I can recognize them. This is a horse, this is a monkey, this is a pig, this is a rabbit." The little fellow stretched out her small hand and pointed at each mooncake. Then she reported their names. Suddenly, she stopped and took the light yellow mooncake in her hand. "This is a dragon. I'm a dragon. It's mine." The little fellow held the mooncake and giggled. After saying that, the little girl didn't hold back and directly took a bite of it. She chewed 2 mouthfuls, but before she could swallow, she puffed up her cheeks and put the remaining half of the mooncake in front of Chun-Shi's mouth. Then she mumbled, "Papa, this mooncake is so delicious you eat it too." Seeing this, Chun-Shi gently took a bite. "Not bad. It tastes like cantaloupe." This mooncake was not a traditional mooncake. The outer shell was a little crispy, and when bitten, it would emit a milky fragrance. When placed in the mouth and tasted it carefully, one would be able to taste the sweet taste of honeydew. Its filling was like glutinous rice, soft, but not sticky to the teeth. There were also some coconut-like things mixed in it, which was very delicious. To be honest, this thing could not be considered a mooncake at all, but a dessert. In Chun-Shi's memory, mooncakes were supposed to be made of egg yolks, red bean paste, 5 kernels, and lotus seed. Although it wasn't as delicious as the one in his mouth, it was more traditional. Perhaps it was because this mooncake was too delicious. The little girl ate 3 pieces in a row, and then collapsed on the sofa. When Chun-Shi saw her like this, he knew that there was no need to make lunch today. When she was full, she would naturally start to feel sleepy. The little girl watched cartoons for a while, and unknowingly, she dozed off. Chun-Shi didn't want to wake her up, so he didn't carry her back to the bedroom. Instead, he gently covered her with a cold blanket. But just as Chun-Shi was covering the little girl with the cold blanket, his phone suddenly rang. Immediately, Chun-Shi was startled, and he quickly picked up the phone. The phone call was from Lin Xian. After Chun-Shi ran into the bedroom, he said into the phone, "Hello. It's me, Lin Xian. I know, what's the matter?" It's nothing. I just wanted to ask, do you have any plans for the Mid-Autumn Festival?" Her voice sounded a little hesitant. It was slow, but there was a rare gentleness in it. Chun-Shi thought for a moment, but he pretended to answer casually, "It's nothing. I just let her play too much a few days ago, so I'm going to tutor her at home for the next 2 days to adjust her. Otherwise, she'll cry for half a day when she goes to school." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Then, Lin Xian's voice became a little lighter. "Oh, then it's nothing. I wanted to ask you guys out for an outing. It seems like I can't. Then I'll ask someone else out. That's all. Happy festival. Happy festival." After dinner, the little girl watched cartoons for a while. When the moon rose, Chun-Shi took her to the courtyard again. Children couldn't watch too much television, so it was a good choice to take her out to admire the moon. So, the father and daughter sat on the swing, like yesterday, and admired the moon. Perhaps it was because she was in a good mood today. The little girl chewed on a mooncake while shouting for Chun-Shi to tell her story. Seeing this, Chun-Shi told her the story of Chang-Yi flying to the moon. There were many stories about Chang-Yi, but the most popular one was that Chang-Yi was forced to swallow a medicine and became an immortal. She was trapped in the moon palace. According to the legend, when the descendant shot down the sun, the Queen Mother of the West gave him a medicine of immortality. The descendant gave the medicine to Chang-Yi for safekeeping. One day, the descendant's disciple, Feng Meng, took advantage of the descendant's absence and forced Chang-Yi to hand over the medicine of immortality. Chang-Yi refused, and Feng Meng threatened her life. In desperation, Chang-Yi had no choice but to swallow the medicine of immortality. The medicine of immortality was an immortal medicine, so Chang-Yi immediately became an immortal. She floated off the ground and flew towards the sky. This medicine was originally given to the descendant by the Queen Mother of the West. Although Chang-Yi became an immortal after eating the medicine of immortality, she couldn't be listed as an immortal, so she could only be trapped in the cold moon palace, never to see the descendant again. The little girl was young, but she seemed to understand the pain of yearning between a man and a woman. After hearing Chun-Shi's story, her little face scrunched up, and she kept muttering to herself, "Big sister Chang-Yi is so pitiful." Seeing this, Chun-Shi could only gently rub her little head. Actually, there was another version of the story of Chang-Yi flying to the moon. That was the version of Chang-Yi abandoning her husband and swallowing everything for herself. Because Chang-Yi didn't know that this medicine was only effective for the descendant. After swallowing it, she discovered that she was forever trapped in the moon palace. This was also a punishment given to her by the Queen Mother of the West. Of course, this version of the legend was a bit dark, so Chun-Shi didn't tell the little girl. The father and daughter pair swayed leisurely on the swing and admired the moon. Meanwhile, in the distance, in a small courtyard, a white-robed woman walked out of the pavilion and looked up at the full moon in the sky. She was dressed in a pure white dress, and under the bright moonlight, she was like a piece of white jade, shining brightly. The moonlight was like water, but it was also bone-chilling. Who could understand Chang-Yi's suffering? 10 frosty shadows turned the courtyard tree. This evening bound people to a corner. Not necessarily. Chang-Yi was without sorrow and hatred. The jade toad was cold, and the osmanthus was lonely. Asterisk, 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 chapter 76. Someone asked the use of the poem at the beginning, saying, "I am water." Now, let me explain. That poem corresponds to this one. Both poems are called Mid-Autumn Moon. One is by Su Shi, and the other is by Yin Shu. Both poems have metaphors. Putting aside the metaphors, these two poems perfectly fit the theme of this book. Chapter 81. With 100 million in cash, even in a first-tier city like Zhonghai, he could be considered rich. However, Chenxi did not seem to have the awareness of being rich. He was still busy buying groceries, cooking, washing clothes, and taking care of the children every day. He was completely the image of a standard housewife. Many people who had money would first buy a house, thinking that they should change to a better environment for their children to grow up in. Chenxi did not consider the issue of changing houses at all. There were mainly a few reasons. First of all, this was the house that he and Yingying had worked hard to buy before he left, so he had deep feelings for this house. If there was a forced demolition, Chenxi might become the most powerful holdout in history. Second, other than the house being a little shabby, the sanitary environment was a little poor, and the surrounding facilities were a little lacking. What else was wrong with it? Most of the residents in the Kong residence district were not rich, so they might often quarrel over some trivial matters. However, if something really happened to a family, the kind of concern and help from the neighbors was not something the rich people who live in a mansion alone could feel. Chenxi was very used to living here, so he did not plan to move at all. He did not even consider redecorating. After all, he used to live very comfortably in the cave, didn't he? But then again, in fact, even Chenxi himself did not realize that he was now completely integrated into this society. It was like returning to the feeling before he left. It was a feeling called life, which made him feel very comfortable every day. In the morning, after the little girl and Aunt Zhang had a video chat, Chenxi hugged her and asked seriously, "Ninian, do you still want to go to kindergarten?" The little girl bit her finger and thought for a while. Then she said hesitantly, "I don't want to go." Perhaps she still remembered that she was the one who strongly requested to go to kindergarten. So she immediately said with some embarrassment, "You can go too." After that, she burrowed into Chenxi's arms. Seeing this, Chenxi could not help but smile and rubbed her little head. It was already far beyond Chenxi's expectations that she could endure until now. Children were always curious about things that they had never come into contact with before. It was the same in kindergarten. Nian used to be envious of other children who could go to kindergarten, but when she really went there, she found that kindergarten was actually not a very fun place. She could play once or twice, but if she did it every day, how could she not get tired of it? In fact, Nian's kindergarten was still okay. Teacher Wang was very responsible, and the arrangement of their curriculum was very scientific. There was not too much content that was beyond the syllabus. Chenxi had a long way to go. After thinking carefully for a while, Chenxi held the little fellow and asked gently, "Since you don't want to go to kindergarten, then don't go, okay?" Hearing this, the little fellow immediately jumped up excitedly, hugging Chenxi's neck and giggling, "I don't want to go. Papa is so nice. Mua." She was now more and more clingy to Chenxi, and of course, she did not want to be separated from Chenxi. After laughing for a while, the little fellow suddenly tilted her head and thought for a while, then pouted and asked, "But the teacher said that adults have to go to work and children have to go to school. If I don't go to kindergarten, then what should I do?" Chenxi gently pinched her little nose, then said with a smile, "You're still young. You just need to eat more and grow up quickly. Children can do what they like, so I won't force you. Since you like to play so much, I'll take you to Shangjing, okay?" "Where is Shangjing?" "Shangjing is the capital of our country. There are the Forbidden City, Tiananmen Square, and the Great Wall there. Do you want to see it?" Hearing this, the little fellow was immediately interested in Chenxi. She stood on Chenxi's legs and jumped up and down. "I want to go. Yes, I want to see the Great Wall." She did not know about the Forbidden City and Tiananmen Square, but she had seen the Great Wall in children's picture books since she was a child, so she was immediately interested. "Then we'll set off tomorrow. When it's National Day, I can take you to Shangjing to see the military parade." Okay. Every festive season, he missed his family. Perhaps he was infected by the festive atmosphere. Chun-Shi suddenly missed his family very much. Nian Yin and Ying Ying were his only family in this world. Ying Ying went to Shangjing 3 years ago, and since then, there had been no news of her. After this period of time, the little fellow had gradually adapted to the days when Aunt Zhang was not around. As long as her father was around, she would not be afraid of anything unfamiliar. It was precisely because of this that, after careful consideration, Chun-Shi finally made the decision. It was time to take the little fellow on a journey to find Ying Ying. A child could not live without a mother, and he could not live without a wife. Shangjing, we're coming. Thank you, Lulu Dai July, for your great reward. Thank you. Would you use 001 for the 10,000 coin reward? Thank you to a leaf of red maple from newly transformed Crow Cave for your great reward. I'll check this chapter from time to time. Some readers may have scolded me before, but they have high resistance to drugs, so they still read until now. So, I have to apologize to you, because as long as it's a bad review, I'll delete the post and permanently ban it. But I only know how to ban it, and I don't know how to unban it. Chapter 82. To be honest, the real reason why Chun-Shi wanted to go to Shangjing so quickly was he had money. After all, Shangjing was the capital of country, and the cost of living there was not low. A few years ago, it was very popular to move to the north. Many outsiders with dreams came for the first time. At first, they did not even have a stable income and could not afford the rent, so they could only live in extremely bad conditions in the basement. That kind of life was very bitter just thinking about it. Chun-Shi was not afraid of hunger or cold. He was completely a humanoid mecha, and the kind that did not consume electricity. If it were not for the little girl, he would have gone straight to Shangjing the moment he received the news about Ying Ying. It was not easy being a father, and he was afraid that his child would be wronged. So no matter how much he longed for it, he could only take good care of his child first. Now that he had money, Chun-Shi could finally fulfill his ambitions. He took Ninian to eat and play along, and slowly walked and looked for her. He treated it as a vacation. Ying Ying last appeared in Shangjing, and it had been 3 years since then. So, Chun-Shi did not have high expectations for the result of this trip. He really did not have much hope. But what was the difference between a person without dreams and a salted fish? He had to try first. Now that he thought about it, Chun-Shi really regretted it. If he had known that 100 years in the heavenly jade world was only a year on Earth, he would have cultivated for a while more before returning. It was all because he was too excited when he received the news that he did not want to wait a moment longer. He set off in a hurry and paid a heavy price because of it. He had not been able to comprehend the true meaning of the word void, so he had not been able to step into the void transformation realm. This was also the reason why his master said that this was the end of his life. If he could calm down and cultivate in seclusion for 100 years, even if he had not stepped into the void transformation realm, he would have touched the threshold. Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets. Chun-Shi's return was exchanged by burning his blood essence. If the spirit energy of heaven and earth was the origin of all things, then blood essence was the origin of immortal cultivators. Using a forbidden technique to burn his blood essence to obtain a cultivation that was far beyond his current realm was a helpless choice to destroy his future. Chun-Shi didn't really care about his future. He was just regretting that he could no longer use his spiritual sense. Otherwise, with his cultivation level, why would he need to go through so much trouble to find someone? The next morning, the flight was booked for 2:40 p.m., first class. Therefore, after breakfast, Chun-Shi was very cooperative and sang, "Where are we going, Daddy?" with the little girl. The father and daughter were singing happily when suddenly there was a light knock on the door. Chun-Shi frowned and glanced at the door, but he did not immediately get up to open it. The little fellow was sitting beside Chun-Shi. When she heard the knock on the door, she immediately shouted excitedly, "Someone is knocking on the door! Someone is knocking on the door!" Chun-Shi did not move, and the little fellow immediately became anxious. She quickly shook his arm and shouted, "Papa, someone is knocking on the door. Open the door." "Got it." Chun-Shi pinched her little face. Only then did he get up and open the door under the little fellow's constant urging. There were 3 people standing outside the door. A middle-aged man in his 40s. Behind the middle-aged man stood 2 big men in black suits, who were obviously bodyguards. After seeing Chun-Shi open the door, the middle-aged man turned his head to the 2 bodyguards and said, "You go down and wait for me." After that, the middle-aged man turned his head and looked at Chun-Shi. He asked enthusiastically, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Chun-Shi?" "Yes, I am." "What's the matter?" "Oh, hello. Hello. It's like this," the middle-aged man laughed and said politely. After a pause, he continued to ask, "I want to take the liberty of asking you a question. Excuse me, do you know Ningzhonghua?" After that, the middle-aged man stared at Chun-Shi's expression as if he wanted to see something from his face. However, Chun-Shi's answer was somewhat out of his expectations. It seemed that he did not mean to hide it at all. Chun-Shi nodded directly and replied, "Yes." The middle-aged man was stunned. He did not expect Chun-Shi to admit it so quickly. However, he was also experienced, so he immediately laughed and said, "That's great. Hello, Mr. Chun. My name is Su Wei. I've been friends with Ningzhonghua for many years." After that, Su Wei laughed and extended his right hand to Chun-Shi. Out of politeness, Chun-Shi shook his hand. Su Wei saw that Chun-Shi's attitude towards him was quite friendly, so he looked around. After confirming that there was no one else around, he said mysteriously, "Mr. Chun, I have something to talk to you about. I wonder if you're free now?" After that, Su Wei glanced behind Chun-Shi, hinting that he wanted to enter the house. However, Chun-Shi had no intention of letting him in. He said directly, "The family next door went out for the Mid-Autumn Festival yesterday. If you have anything to say it here." Listening to his tone, he seemed to be a little impatient. Seeing this, Su Wei could only look around again and said in a low voice, "I'm here this time mainly to talk to you about the pill, so it might be a bit inconvenient to talk here." Hearing this, Chun-Shi suddenly laughed. After he looked at Su Wei from head to toe, he looked at Su Wei and said, "You're very good. Yesterday, Ningzhonghua just delivered the mooncakes, and today, Su Wei came looking for him." It had to be said that Su Wei was really good at finding people and analyzing information. As a businessman, Su Wei was obviously a successful businessman. Su Wei smiled politely. Just as he was about to say something, Chun-Shi continued, "This pill is for sale to anyone. I can sell it to you for 10 million per pill. However, you still need to help me find someone. How about that?" Su Wei was a little confused. He felt like this young man in front of him was a bit too direct. He was so honest that he began to wonder if this person was a liar. Chun-Shi was a secret weapon for Ningzhonghua. So except for Zhang Jiada, Ningzhonghua never mentioned Chun-Shi to anyone. But unfortunately, Ningzhonghua was just a businessman after all, not a senior government official. So he couldn't hide a secret at all. Therefore, Su Wei easily learned about the existence of Chun-Shi from the driver. Although the price was a bit high, everything was worth it. When Su Wei learned from the driver that Ningzhonghua respected a young man very much, he immediately sent people to investigate this young man. Although he was still a little uncertain whether the pill in Ningzhonghua's hand was obtained from this young man. But there was no doubt that this young man was definitely not simple. Therefore, Su Wei immediately came to visit. What he didn't expect was that this young man actually admitted it directly and even made his request directly. Chun-Shi waited for a while. Seeing that Su Wei didn't immediately answer after listening to his request, he frowned and asked, "Is there a problem?" Su Wei just hesitated out of caution. Seeing that Chun-Shi was urging him, he immediately nodded and said, "No problem." What a joke! That pill in Ningzhonghua's hand was sold for 100 million. But Su Wei also knew that 100 million for one pill was the price Ningzhonghua got through the auction. Once the second batch of pills came out, everyone would understand that this pill could be mass-produced. Naturally, it wouldn't be sold at such a high price. Su Wei thought that although it couldn't be sold for 100 million, 30 to 50 million shouldn't be a big problem, right? This was a good deal. Seeing that Su Wei agreed, Chun-Shi nodded and then shouted into the house, "Big Cat, help me get the small white bottle on the table." Then, in front of Su Wei's stunned expression, Chun-Shi slowly took the small bottle from the big cat's mouth and handed it to Su Wei. 10 pills, 100 million. When will it be paid? Old Tai, you rewarded me with 100,000 coins for 20 chapters? Rich. Unfortunately, I can't eat it unless I kill Zhao Yuan's entire family to get enough. Chapter 83. After Su Wei left Kong Ju community and got into his car, he still felt like he was living in a dream. It was too smooth. It was so smooth that he couldn't help but wonder if he had been tricked. That Mr. Chun didn't look like a hidden expert at all. Instead, he looked more like the owner of a small store on the ground floor of the community. He smoked all day, sat in front of the cashier with his legs crossed, and watched TV. He didn't care when customers came, and when the customers finished choosing, he would naturally take the initiative to put the money on the cashier. All he had to do was count the money. "Mr. Su, where are we going?" The driver's voice awakened Su Wei from his chaotic thoughts. He froze for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "To the lab." Although it was almost impossible for Ning Zhonghua to predict that he would set a trap for him here, Su Wei was still a little worried, so he was going to let the lab test the ingredients of his pill again to make sure that the 10 pills in his hand were exactly the same as the previous ones. Su Wei didn't dare to let his employees test the pills again. After all, this pill was too expensive. Su Wei didn't know Chun-Shi as well as Ning Zhonghua, so it was normal for him to have some doubts. But in fact, in Chun-Shi's eyes, this pill was only fit to be a snack for the big cat. The energy pill was mainly used to improve a person's physique and heal chronic diseases in the human body, so the effect was very obvious for the first time. The reason Chun-Shi didn't refine a higher-level pill was mainly because the little girl was too young. Chun-Shi still wanted her to have a normal childhood. Otherwise, the little girl would become a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus if she ate a higher-level pill. How could she play with other children then? Before he could scare others, the little girl would already think of him as an alien. After lunch, Chun-Shi looked at the time and thought that it was about time to leave, so he put a note on the door. "I'm going somewhere far away." But this time, he didn't write down when he would be home, but left his phone number. After all, he didn't know how long he would stay in Shangjing, so it was safer to leave his number. This trip was still as light and simple as last time. Chun-Shi didn't bring any luggage. He planned to buy new clothes for the little fellow when they arrived in Shangjing. They arrived at the airport. Perhaps the painful experience last time had left a shadow in the big cat's heart, so it was unwilling to get down from the little guy's arms. Seeing this, Chun-Shi could only glare at it fiercely. Chun-Shi's eyes were very lethal, so Big Cat immediately cowered. Thus, it had no choice but to obediently jump down from the little fellow's arms and leap out like a black shadow. Even though both Shangjing and Zhonghai were international first-tier cities, there was still a clear difference between them. As the saying goes, Shangjing is noble, Zhonghai is foreign. Zhonghai had only been open for about 160 years, but Shangjing was an ancient city with a history of over 3,000 years. Therefore, Zhonghai was still too young compared to Shangjing. Shangjing was an inland city, and there were many industries, so the smog was very serious. However, Chun-Shi chose a good day because it was almost National Day, so the factories near Shangjing began to arrange to stop work, ready to give the city a chance to breathe. This also allowed the father and daughter, who had just arrived in Shangjing, to see the blue sky and white clouds. The autumn air was refreshing, and the hall was full of ginkgo trees. After getting off the plane, Chun-Shi carried the little fellow in a taxi and went straight to the hotel. Shangjing received more than 200 million tourists a year. It was a very developed tourism city, and now it was the Mid-Autumn Festival, so Chun-Shi searched for a long time before he found a 5-star hotel with empty rooms near the Summer Palace. The hotel was called Pear Garden, and the architectural style leaned towards the ancient Chinese style. As soon as the father and daughter walked into the hotel, it was as if they had arrived at an ancient palace. There were pavilions, corridors, cornices, and arches everywhere. It really had a special charm. The little fellow had been in Zhonghai for a long time, and suddenly came to a place full of cultural heritage and was deeply attracted in an instant. The cost of living in Shangjing was much higher than in Immerse, so the same high-end villa suite, the same single-family courtyard, the price of the pear garden was as high as 18,000 yuan. There was no hot spring in this courtyard, so the little fellow pouted and was very unhappy. But when she walked into the room and came to the master bedroom, she immediately became excited and jumped onto the bed, and then happily rolled on the bed. It was a frame bed with a moon cave door, and there were red sandalwood dragons on the 4 pillars. In addition, the size of the bed was obviously much larger than an ordinary bed, so it looked a bit like the bed of an emperor. The little fellow seemed to like this smell, so she was unwilling to get up from the bed. Perhaps the flight was tiring. The little fellow lay down for a while and actually fell asleep just like that. Seeing her comfortable appearance, the big cat also jumped onto the bed and then curled up next to the little fellow to take a nap. She glanced at the little fellow and then gently covered the little fellow with the quilt. He silently sat at the end of the bed, quietly looking at the little fellow's sleeping face. After an unknown amount of time, the sun had already set, and the little fellow slowly woke up. She sleepily rubbed her eyes, and then seemed to be frightened by the dim room, and quickly sat up with her hands supporting her. Chapter 84. Shangjing used to be called Sijio City. In ancient times, Shangjing City was divided into the Outer City, Inner City, Imperial City, and Forbidden City. What was Sijio City? In fact, it was the 4 gates of the Imperial City and the 9 gates of the Inner City. The 4 gates of the Imperial City were Tian and Min, Dian Min, Dong and Min, and Xin Min. The 9 gates of the Inner City were Dong and Min, Xin Min, Choyang Min, Fun Min, Choa Min, Xuanwu Min, Dexing Min, Anding Min, and Qian Min. These gates were very famous. Even people who had never been to Shangjing might have heard of them from newspapers and television. When some of the older people in Shangjing were bragging, they would tell others that their ancestors lived in Sijio City with their Beijing accent. That was because in the Qing dynasty, the emperor lived in the Forbidden City, the royal family lived in the Imperial City, and the commoners and Han people could only live in the Outer City. By saying this, he was actually trying to express that his ancestors were relatives of the imperial family. As for whether it was true or not, only God knew. Taizu once said, "The temple is small, but the gods are big, and the pond is shallow." However, that was decades ago. Shangjing's pond was not shallow now. It was not an exaggeration to say that there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Just like a joke, if one stood on the street and threw a brick casually, it might hit a few officials. After all, this was the capital, and also a famous historical city that had been passed down for thousands of years. The magnificent history had been blown away by the wind and rain, and the world had changed, but Shangjing's majestic city still stood there. This was the origin of its unique charm. At 8:30 in the evening, it was neither too early nor too late. In addition, the little girl had already slept, so after Qinshi accompanied her in the courtyard for a while, she started to clamor about going out to see Tiananmen. This was outside the 4th Ring Road. It would take more than an hour to take the subway from Summer Palace to Tiananmen. Even if there were no traffic jams at night, it would take at least 40 minutes. Therefore, Qinshi wisely rejected her request. The little girl refused and kept clamoring to go out and play. She almost rolled on the ground and threw a tantrum. She had just woken up and eaten, so of course, she was full of energy. Seeing this, Qinshi had no choice but to agree to take her to Summer Palace. The Summer Palace would open at 8 o'clock, and tourists were not allowed to enter. However, Qinshi did not intend to enter from the front door. He carried the little girl and walked around the outside of the Summer Palace. Eventually, they arrived at a secluded path. After that, Qinshi looked around and confirmed that there were no cameras around. He held the little fellow in his arms and lightly stepped on the ground. His entire body was like a light bird as he lightly flew over the wall. While Chun-Shi was flying, the little girl's eyes widened as she stared blankly at the treetops that were getting closer and closer. Behind the wall was the embankment of the lake, where there was a stretch of towering trees. Chun-Shi gently landed on the ground with the little fellow in his arms. At this moment, the little fellow seemed to have finally regained his senses. She waved her hands and immediately opened her mouth to shout, "Papa, we are flying. It's flying." The child's scream was very sharp. It pierced through the calm night sky and traveled toward the sparkling Kunming Lake. Chun-Shi quickly put his index finger on her mouth and said, "Sure, Daddy didn't buy a ticket. If someone finds out, we will be kicked out." Hearing this, the little guy immediately covered his mouth with both hands, revealing a pair of quick-witted eyes that were rolling around. This was the first time Chun-Shi showed his ability in front of the little fellow. However, the little fellow's reaction was not as big as he expected. A child's imagination was very rich. Many children would fantasize that their father was Superman. Therefore, when Chun-Shi showed his inhuman side, the little fellow was not surprised. Instead, she was very excited. She covered her mouth with her hands and kept making woo-woo sounds. Seeing her like this, it seemed that she wanted to say something but was afraid that she would be kicked out. Therefore, she could only cover her mouth tightly and did not dare to say anything. Seeing her excited look, Chun-Shi did not know whether to laugh or cry. After setting up a sound insulation restriction, he said with a smile, "What do you want to say? You can say it now. Daddy is so awesome." After saying that, the little fellow kissed Chun-Shi's face heavily. Then she pointed to a small island in Kunming Lake and shouted, "Daddy, I want to go there. Take me there." "Okay, let's go." "Where is Mount Yen?" "Where is Mount Yen?" Unparalleled romance belongs to Kunming. Kunming Lake used to be called Wangshan Lake. It was a natural lake formed by many springs in the northwest suburbs of Shangjing. During the reign of Emperor Qianlong, Qianlong ordered the construction of Qingyi Garden next to Wangshan Lake. Then, the lake was developed and formed into the current scale. The name of Kunming Lake was taken from a story of Emperor Wu of Han who opened the Kunming Lake in Cham and practiced naval warfare. In 1860, Qingyi Garden was burned down by the British and French army. In 1888, Cixi ordered the reconstruction and renamed Summer Palace. Unfortunately, in 1900, Summer Palace was destroyed by the Eight Power Army. It was really a fate full of misfortunes. The area of Kunming Lake was about 3/4 of the total area of Summer Palace. Chun-Shi had already looked at the map before coming, so he was very clear about where he was now. There were 3 small islands in Summer Palace. Chun-Shi was now near the Mirror Pavilion Island. The place that the little fellow wanted to go to was the Mirror Pavilion. Most of the scenic spots in Summer Palace were concentrated on a longevity mountain in the north. Looking from afar, one could see a scene of bright lights. The Mirror Pavilion was originally a watchtower to prevent villagers from entering. However, during the reign of Emperor Wangshu, because there was no money to repair the Mirror Pavilion that was destroyed by the British and French army's heavy artillery, the remaining materials were dismantled for other purposes. Since then, the Mirror Pavilion had become a deserted island in the water and had never been repaired. The weather in Shangjing was good recently. In addition, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival, so the moon had been rising for several nights in a row. Chun-Shi carried the little fellow to the lake and used his hand to scratch her nose. Then he smiled and asked, "Daddy will show you a magic trick, okay?" "Okay, I want to see a magic trick." Hearing this, Chun-Shi nodded and prepared to play a magic trick to tease her. But then, Chun-Shi seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said to the little fellow seriously, "This is a magic trick. If you want to learn, Daddy can teach you in the future. But before you learn it, don't do what I do. It's very dangerous. Do you understand?" Hearing this, the little fellow immediately nodded in agreement like a chick pecking at rice. "I know, I won't learn it secretly. I'll only learn if Daddy teaches me." "Good girl." Chun-Shi gently patted the little fellow's head. Then, under the little fellow's slightly dazed gaze, he slowly stepped on the water. People can walk on water? Everything that was happening in front of her was clearly beyond the scope of the little fellow's understanding. So, she immediately opened her mouth and said, "Daddy," but as soon as she shouted, the little fellow reacted. Then, she quickly covered her mouth with her hand and let she take her slowly to the deserted island. It was not until she walked a distance that the little fellow seemed to finally come to her senses. She did not feel afraid. Instead, she curiously rested her chin on Shi's shoulder and looked at Shi's heels. She saw that every time she took a step, there would be a circle of faint ripples on the surface of the lake. The night breeze blew by Kunming Lake, and the moonlight shone on the surface of the lake, making it sparkling. Shi held the little fellow. Chapter 85. The Pavilion of Mirrors was located on the west bank of Kunming Lake, commonly known as Tuanqing. Therefore, this lake on the southwest side of Kunming Lake was also known as Lake Tuanqing. The outer circle of the Pavilion of Mirrors was about 60 meters in diameter. It was a circular water fortress. Unfortunately, it was destroyed during the reign of Cixi. Now, only a desolate island of ruins remained. Lake Tuanqing was the destination of the south to north water transfer project. It was also the main source of drinking water in Shangjing. Because there were too many people who came here to swim, in order to protect the water source, the government could only pay the price of destroying the summer palace and depriving the tourists of the view. They invested tens of millions to increase the height and increase the fence to prevent tourists from entering. Thus, it was difficult to recreate the scenery of Lake Tuanqing. There were no private cruises on Kunming Lake. Therefore, if one wanted to get to the Pavilion of Mirrors, they could either secretly swim over the fence or wait for the lake to freeze in winter and step on the ice to get there. This place had been sealed for a long time. It was indeed a bit desolate. In addition, it was already late. The lush trees on the island blocked most of the moonlight. Therefore, it looked gloomy and was especially scary. She carried the little girl and gently stepped onto the Pavilion of Mirrors. What he saw was a burnt tree. Its mottled shadow echoed with the scarred city wall behind it. Through the gaps between the tree roots, he could see the shadow of the Jade Spring Mountain Pagoda in the distance. This place was too remote and gloomy. Therefore, the little girl immediately became afraid. She could only shrink into Shi's arms as much as possible. Her small hands hugged Shi tightly. Her palms were cold. This also made Shi frown slightly. He originally thought that the Pavilion of Mirrors was a good place. He didn't expect to find that it was just a desolate ruin. It was not good to scare the child. Therefore, Shi gently placed his left hand on the little girl's head. He carried her and prepared to leave. However, before leaving, Shi suddenly raised his head and looked thoughtfully at the abandoned city wall that was more than 10 meters high. He then stepped on the water again and slowly left. Back at the hotel, the little girl was a bit unhappy. She was probably frightened. Even when Shi said that he would play games with her, she was not interested at all. Shi had no choice but to hug her and sit on the bed. Then, he told her Andersen's fairy tales. The story wasn't important. What was important was that her father was by her side. Therefore, the little fellow wrapped herself in the soft quilt and lay in Shi's arms, listening to his long-winded story. Finally, she slowly relaxed and fell into a deep sleep. The next day, before dawn, perhaps because she was frightened last night, the little girl seemed to be having a nightmare. Before she woke up, she waved her little hands and murmured in a daze, "Papa, Papa, Daddy is here." Shi was sitting cross-legged beside her. When he heard her cry, he immediately checked on her condition. Then, he placed his hand on the little fellow's forehead and said softly, "Daddy is here. Baby, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." Perhaps Shi's comfort was effective. The little girl hugged Shi's wrist, then changed her position and continued to sleep. Shi's wrist was grabbed by her, so he couldn't move casually. So, he could only maintain this awkward position and quietly look at the little girl's sleeping face. His eyes were very gentle, full of a kind of fatherly love. Zhonghai, Jean City Villa. In Ning Zhong was study. Mr. Who sat on the sofa quietly, waiting for Ning Zhonghua's reply. He had been with Ning Zhonghua since he was 18 years old. Now, it had been more than 20 years. As for him, he had slowly climbed up the ladder to become the vice president of the Zhonghai Ocean Group from his position as a storekeeper. Mr. Hu's education level was not high. After dropping out of junior high school, he came out to work. If it weren't for Ning Zhonghua's promotion, he would not have been able to get to where he was today. Therefore, in Mr. Hu's heart, Ning Zhonghua was his benefactor and also his benefactor who gave him a chance to prove his value in life. After listening to Mr. Hu's report, Ning Zhonghua frowned slightly. After careful consideration, Ning Zhonghua asked, "Are you sure the news is true?" Mr. Hu immediately nodded and said with certainty, "It's absolutely true. Su Wei must have Mr. Chen's elixirs, but I'm not sure how many he has for the time being. How'd he find Mr. Chen?" After saying that, without waiting for Mr. Hu to answer, Ning Zhonghua suddenly seemed to think of something. He suddenly shook his head and laughed. After gently shaking his head, he sighed as if he was deeply moved. "Other than you, only old Lu and Xiao Tong know about Mr. Chen's existence. Yesterday, Mr. Lu suddenly took a long leave. I really thought he had something urgent to deal with. I really didn't expect that Mr. Lu would betray me one day." Mr. Hu did not speak. Although he was the vice president and old Lu was the chauffeur, old Lu had more experience than him if they were to compare. Ning Zhonghua would never mistreat his confidants. Mr. Hu wanted to climb up the ranks, so Ning Zhonghua let him sit in the vice president position. His position in the Ocean Group was second only to Ning Xiaotong. Mr. Lu was not so career-oriented. Ning Zhonghua wanted to transfer him many times, but Mr. Lu refused with a smile. Therefore, Ning Zhonghua could only give him a big red packet every year, which was as thick as Mr. Hu's annual salary. Ning Zhonghua sighed for a while, but he did not seem to care too much about this matter. Chapter 86. Shangjing Mintai Affairs Investigation Center. Just from a name alone, this place seemed to be very powerful. But in fact, this was a so-called private detective company, the illegal kind. In 1993, the Ministry of Public Security issued a notice prohibiting any unit or individual from opening various forms of civil affairs investigation, security affairs investigation, and other private detective agencies. The prohibited services included handling civil and economic disputes, debt recovery, security and technical consulting, investigations involving personal privacy, and so on. In 2002, the State Administration for Industry and Commerce Trademark Office adjusted the scope of trademark registration. The original 42 categories of goods and services were expanded to 45 categories. Among them, the new permitted registration categories included the provision of private bodyguards, detective companies, and security services such as search and investigation. Therefore, many detective companies even had a formal registered trademark of private detective. However, a strange thing happened. The State Administration for Industry and Commerce allowed the registration of trademarks, but it did not mean that the ban on private detective had been lifted. It was precisely because of this that private detective was still an illegal industry. The reason why the Ministry of Public Security prohibited it was mainly because private detective investigations were likely to touch on other people's privacy. Moreover, the evidence and materials provided by private detectives were not credible, and there was even the possibility of falsification. The state prohibited it, but the consumer market had a huge demand. Therefore, in recent years, there were more and more private detective companies with names such as consulting companies, public affairs investigation centers, and public affairs investigation centers. These companies that called themselves public affairs investigation agencies had a wide range of services, including search, emotional loyalty investigation, child behavior monitoring, recovery of large debts, whereabouts investigation, credit investigation, intellectual property investigation, as well as anti-counterfeiting and protection of rights, economic intelligence investigation, and so on. If private detectives wanted to complete their business, they could only use methods such as tracking, stalking, and candid photography to obtain the corresponding evidence. However, this kind of evidence collection method would inevitably seriously infringe on the privacy of the investigated person and may even endanger the normal production and living order of other people, causing innocent victims. Therefore, it was prohibited by law. Article 42 of the Public Security Administration Punishment Law clearly stated that peeping, candid photography, eavesdropping, and spreading other people's privacy would be detained for not more than 5 days or fined not more than 500 yuan. If the circumstances were serious, the detention would be more than 5 days, but less than 10 days, and a fine of not more than 500 yuan could be imposed. It was precisely because of the fear of public security agencies that many detective companies were secretive about their business. The company's address and contact information were often changed, and it was difficult to find. Naturally, it was very mysterious. As one of the leading private detectives in Shangjing, Feng Mintai was not as low-key as the average person. He had his professional dignity and was determined to be the spokesperson for the private detective industry. Therefore, after he became famous, Feng Mintai moved his company to a 5A grade office building and swore that he would never be like a rat in the gutter, hiding all day long. Of course, his company's main business was consulting, not private investigation. On this day, Feng Mintai welcomed a group of strange customers. A man who looked to be less than 30 years old was holding a 4 or 5-year-old little girl in his arms. The little girl was holding a black kitten in her arms. Feng Mintai originally thought that it was some kind of custody dispute, so he didn't bother and just sent someone to receive them. However, less than half a minute after the receptionist left, he scrambled over, saying that it was a big client and that he needed to attend to him personally. Feng Mintai had not personally received a customer for many years. After all, he was now a successful person with a certain social status. If he wanted to receive them personally, they had to be well-known figures in the legal world or leaders of public security organs. However, since the client had requested it, there was no harm in meeting him. However, Feng Mintai walked into the reception room calmly and sat opposite the man with a strong aura. The man's first sentence immediately scared him so much that he couldn't help but stand up. 10 million to help me find a person. If you really can't find him, it's okay. As long as you can provide me with useful clues, a clue for 1 million. How about that? 10 million to find a person. Even if he couldn't find the person, as long as he could provide clues, a clue was worth 1 million. Was this a police warrant? Feng Mintai had been in the business for so many years, but he had never seen such a big client. How was this a client? This was a F** king god of wealth. How much did he earn per month to support an employee? The cost of living in Shangjing was not low. Feng Mintai offered the basic employees a basic salary of 4,000. If there was business, he would receive a commission based on the business unit price. Because of the special nature of the work, the employees would receive a living allowance of 200 yuan per day during the performance of the business. Even so, taking everything into account, how much was an employee's monthly salary? 50 million. Feng Mintai could immediately pull out a reinforced company of people to serve the god of wealth in front of him. Moreover, their industry was different from other industries. The industry had frequent exchanges, and there was no competition among the same industry. Similar to the business of finding people, when he received a commission, his colleagues from all over the country would take the initiative to disclose relevant clues to him. Then, he would distribute the information to his colleagues. Wasn't it difficult to find a person who owed money and ran away, hiding in a small county town? But didn't they also catch one accurately? Finding people was too easy. Therefore, even with Feng Mintai's current self-cultivation, he was so excited that he almost jumped up. Their industry usually required a deposit of 20%. However, because the contract amount was too large, Feng Mintai only symbolically asked for a deposit of 100,000 yuan. Then, he patted his chest and promised that he could definitely find this person. The god of wealth seemed to be very satisfied with Feng Mintai's professionalism. After listening to his bragging, he decisively paid the deposit, then carried the child and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Feng Mintai immediately called for 2 lackeys. The 3 of them escorted the god of wealth all the way downstairs. Then, they nodded and bowed as they respectfully sent the god of wealth off. After the god of wealth left, one of the lackeys asked with a little doubt, "Boss, who is that? Didn't you say that we have to pay attention to style now? Why do I feel that our behavior just now was very degrading?" Hearing this, Feng Mintai jumped up and slapped him on the back of the head. Then he shouted loudly, "Degrading, degrading. What else do you know other than cutting people? That's the god of wealth, my grandpa, and also your grandpa. Do you understand? Learn from me, all of you. Let's go up and have a meeting. Call those guys back. Let's get to work." After explaining the task to Feng Mintai, Chunshi took the little girl straight to Tiananmen, ready to play in Shangjing. What he didn't know was, just as he was looking for the help of a private detective, in Zhonghai, Ning Zhonghua and Su Wei also took action. 2 big networks were launched from 2 super first-tier cities in Huaxia at the same time. They were bound to find that person for him. "Brother, don't rush me. The big plot is about to unfold. It's not like the previous small plot. Let me adjust the plot properly. After all, quality is more important than quantity." Hearing this, the little guy, who was originally standing in the passenger seat, immediately withered like an eggplant that had been hit by frost. She looked out the window and snorted unhappily. Then, she crawled back to the back seat. "Good girl. Let's go. Daddy will take you to see Tiananmen." In the small courtyard, the white-clothed woman and the yellow-clothed woman, named Qiu Qing, were playing chess in the pavilion. On the black and white chessboard, the white-clothed woman held the white chess pieces while the yellow-clothed woman held the black chess pieces. The game was in a stalemate. Under the constant pressure of the white chess pieces, the black chess pieces gradually lost their composure. The territory that they worked so hard to occupy was slowly nibbled away by the white chess pieces. Seeing that she was at a disadvantage, the yellow-clothed woman was still smiling. It was as if she didn't put all her attention on the chessboard. It was the white-clothed woman's turn to make her move. She gently picked up a chess piece with her index and middle finger. Just as she was about to make her move, she suddenly heard the yellow-clothed woman's ing laugh. "Sister, he is still looking for you. According to the current progress, I think he will get news about you soon." Hearing this, the white-clothed woman suddenly felt as if she was struck by lightning. In her excitement, she couldn't help but loosen her fingers, and the white chess piece in her hand fell on the chessboard. Although she quickly recovered, her forced calm appearance couldn't escape the yellow-clothed woman's eyes. Life was like a game of chess. There was no regret when one made a move. Since she had made her choice, she had to stick to it. The yellow-clothed woman smiled. "You and I are sisters. We have been the closest since we were young. If you have something on your mind, I can guess it even if you don't say it. Why hide it from me?" As she spoke, the yellow-clothed woman picked up a black chess piece. Then, the black chess piece was placed at the position where the white-clothed woman wanted to place her chess piece. It was because of the placement of this black chess piece that the situation instantly turned around. The black chess piece that was originally in a desperate situation was instantly revived by her. The black chess piece was about to fly away, and the white chess piece was already in a desperate situation. The white-clothed woman stared at the chessboard in a daze. After sighing softly, she shook her head. Then, she took out 2 white chess pieces and placed them at the bottom right corner of the chessboard. She admitted defeat. Seeing that the white-clothed woman admitted defeat, the yellow-clothed woman smiled and was about to say something. However, at this moment, the white-clothed woman spoke first. "Hua Qing, you really don't have to compete with me. Because I didn't arrange it, and it's not what I wanted. I know you have resentment, but please don't blame me for it, okay?" The white-clothed woman said very pleadingly. The yellow-clothed woman was stunned for a moment, and her expression changed slightly. She thought for a moment, then forced a smile and said, "Sister, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand?" Hearing this, the white-clothed woman could only sigh deeply. Then, she looked at the yellow-clothed woman and said seriously, Hua Qing, if you really treat me as your sister, then don't compete with me anymore, okay? After all, you're the person closest to me. Why do you always have to compete with me? That's not what I want. It's really not what I want. As she spoke, the woman in white turned her head to look outside the pavilion and muttered to herself toward the sky. The yellow-clothed woman was silent for a long time. A gust of wind blew in the small courtyard, carrying the fallen leaves at the end of September and making a rustling sound on the ground. Suddenly, the yellow-clothed woman chanted softly, 100 gods descend, the heavenly gate opens. After hearing the yellow-clothed woman's chant, the white-clothed woman was stunned. Then, she could no longer suppress the emotions in her heart. 2 streams of hot tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes, once the heavenly gate opens, the mortal world ends, as she cried. She took off the necklace on her neck. After looking at it affectionately, the white-clothed woman handed the necklace to the yellow-clothed woman and pleaded, Hua Qing, can you do me a favor? The yellow-clothed woman looked at her with a complicated expression, then shook her head. No, I can't help you. With that, she flicked her sleeves, stood up, and walked out of the pavilion. The white-clothed woman stared blankly as she flicked her sleeves and left. Her face was full of despair. Creak! After a soft sound, the door opened. The yellow-clothed woman did not leave immediately. She hesitated for a moment, then suddenly turned her head and said to the white-clothed woman in the pavilion, If you're willing to give me that necklace, I won't mind. Hearing this, the white-clothed woman's tears turned into a smile. That smile was like a flower after the rain. It was so sweet that it could make everything in the world pale in comparison. If Chun-Shi was here, he would realize that this necklace was exactly the same as the one he gave to Ying-Ying. Tiffany, and Ceres. It was an entry-level design with the meaning of not forgetting one's original intentions. It only cost 1,450 yuan, and the receipt was still in their bedside table. This was also the only necklace that Chun-Shi gave her. Thank you, brother Kadet Sumuri, for building 1,000 stories and being promoted to a guardian. Thank you, Mr. Xia Zhongyu, for the 10,000 yuan reward. Chapter 88. Ming Shu Si Tianji recorded. In the 5th month of the 3rd year of Longqing, the sky split in the northwest of Jiangzhou. Song Dynasty, Taiping Imperial Records 874 recorded, Taiyan sky split into 2 thunder-like sounds. It was when the king of Changsha was ordered by the emperor to reject Wang Ying, and the king of Hejian ordered the chaos. In the 8th month of the 2nd year of Taiyan, the sky split into 2 without clouds and thunder. Southern History, Liang Benji recorded, in the 1st month of the 2nd year of Liang Taiqing, the sky split in the northwest. It was 10 feet long and 20 feet wide. The light was like lightning, and the sound was like thunder. Tang Dynasty, Astronomical Records recorded, in the 12th month of the 13th year of Baoda, the sky split in the northeast. It was 12 feet long. Qing Dynasty, Essex County Annals, Geographical Records, Fortune and Fortune recorded, in the 1st month of the 1st year of Zhengde, the sky split in the north. The red light was 20 feet wide and 10 feet long. It disappeared in a flash. Qing Dynasty, Chongqing County Annals, Volume 14 recorded, in the 4th month of the 22nd year of Jiajing, the sky split in the night of the 2nd day. Li County Annals, complete. Fortune and Fortune recorded, on the 10th day of the 4th month of the 35th year of King Qianlong, the sky split in the 9th month. The yellow light shone brightly, and something as big as a bowl fell to the ground. Qing Dynasty, HD County Annals, Fortune and Fortune recorded, in the 6th year of Guangxu, on the 3rd day of the 2nd month, there was no disaster. The sound was like thunder, and the sky split in the southeast corner. The light was like lightning, more than 10 feet long, and it disappeared after a while. These were all records and official documents and official histories. They recorded a strange phenomenon, commonly known as the opening of the heavenly gate. In some folklore, the heavenly gate represented the southern heavenly gate of the heavenly court. When a heavenly gate was opened, some people who had achieved success in cultivation could ascend and become immortals. For some reason, as human society progressed, the number of times the heavenly gate was opened became less and less. Therefore, there were almost no relevant reports. If one wanted to understand, they could only find it in various history books. If one had to explain it from a scientific point of view, the opening of the heavenly gate was more like a projection due to the changes in the Earth's magnetic field. It might be more complicated than a mirage, but it was still just an illusion projection. But if one explained it this way, there would be a problem. If the heavenly gate was a projection, where was the actual body? Chen-Shi took Ninian around Shangjing City for 3 days. Every time he came to a crowded place, Chen-Shi would deliberately stop and carefully scan every face that came and went. Although Chen-Shi had lost his divine sense, his 5 senses were still far superior to ordinary people. So even if it was just a face-to-face encounter, he could still accurately remember the appearance of that person. While Chen-Shi was strolling around Shangjing with the little fellow in his arms, trying his luck, Su Wei, on the other hand, used a method similar to hunger marketing to inflate the price of the pills higher and higher. Because Ningzhongwa's first batch of medicinal pills paved the way, the 10 patients who had already taken the medicinal pills and whose physical condition had improved greatly all spread the news. Under the effect of 1 to 10, 10 to 100, the news instantly spread to the ears of the rich and powerful all over the country. Everyone began to inquire about the origin of this medicinal pill. 50 years of age is not considered a natural lifespan. The living conditions of modern people are getting better and better, and their lifespans are getting longer and longer. So many people are still in good health even if they are 50 years old. However, some middle-aged and elderly people with weaker physiques will gradually suffer from various diseases because of the decline of their immune function. Only people who have been tortured by illness will know how strong it is to be able to live optimistically while being tortured by pain every day. Although Su Wei was a business tycoon, he was not proficient in marketing. Su Wei first looked for Chen-Shi to buy medicine mainly because he was in the pharmaceutical industry, so he was so sensitive to medicinal pills and went straight to the door. But he didn't expect that after the first 10 medicinal pills of Ningzhongwa were fermenting and brewing, when the news that he still had 10 pills in his hand spread, the entire Zhonghai went crazy. The more the news spread, the more amazing it became. So much so that several big shots in Shangjing personally called him when they heard the news, and Su Wei had to reluctantly give away 3 pills. This was modern society. Technological progress has constantly improved efficiency, and the rhythm of life is 10,000 times faster than in the Ming Dynasty. How long would it take for a secret that was not a secret to spread throughout the country? Su Wei now had a deep understanding of this. This was a King wonderful experience that was both painful and delightful. Chen-Shi's medicinal pills were not omnipotent, but when one of the patients with terminal cancer took it, this medicine became popular. Although the illness was not cured, at least it was temporarily under control and would not continue to worsen. At the same time, it also significantly improved the patient's mental condition. What's more, this medicine really had a certain effect. It was completely enough to make people go crazy. As a result, the simplified version of the Peiyuan Dan that Chen-Shi casually refined was actually crowned with a resounding name by others. Defying the heavens and changing fate, the king of hell is worried. Su Wei and Ningzhongwa were 2 different types of people. But after all, he was also a successful businessman. So, just by relying on his own businessman's intuition, he inadvertently took away the plate that Ningzhongwa painstakingly set up. Su Wei originally thought that this medicine could only be sold for 30 to 50 million, but it was not until now that he truly understood the value of this medicinal pill. Su Wei didn't know whether Ningzhongwa was angry or not, but he was angry now. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, but 2 strangers broke into his house. The appearance of these 2 people could be accurately described with one word: short and vigorous. They were not tall, about 7 meters, and their skin was a little brown because of long-term sun exposure. When they opened their mouths, they spoke a language that Su Wei had never heard before. Can you two change to a language that I can understand? Su Wei sat on the sofa in a bathrobe. He raised his hands high and spoke carefully while secretly looking at the bodyguard who was lying on the ground at the door. He didn't know whether he was dead or alive. Give us the medicinal pill. Hearing this, one of them spoke awkwardly in Mandarin while strangling Su Wei's neck. He completely put on a posture that said he would kill him if he didn't give it to him. What medicine? Su Wei still wanted to play dumb, but as soon as he finished speaking, he regretted it. Because these two people obviously came prepared. When they heard that he was playing dumb, they immediately punched his lower abdomen. Bang! After that punch, Su Wei almost fainted because of the pain. The man pretended to hit him again, and Su Wei repeatedly begged for mercy. Stop! Stop hitting me! I'll tell you the truth. I've already sold all the medicinal pills. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Wei's lower abdomen was heavily punched again. And after this punch, Su Wei immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Wait! Su Wei was nearly 50 years old. Wine, women, avarice, and temper had already destroyed his body, and he was reluctant to eat the precious medicinal pill. So after taking 2 punches, Su Wei obviously couldn't bear it.